G'day guys, how's it going, man? I was just recovered from that mystery bug. Today we're gonna be with Sikh Women's Aid. I'm gonna try add them. How do I add? Invite to join. Just bear with me. I don't know if you've not been keeping up with the TikTok BRDBs. Maharaj was burnt. Sikh Granth Sahib Ji Ango.
Yeah, so thanks to have they joined Sikh Women's Aid. It takes a bit of time in it. Invite to join. Yeah. So thanks to the work of Sikh Army, I know, and Amar Singh Khalsa, two people have been arrested for the Byadbi. They're from Wednesbury, the culprits. When they burnt Sidhu Granth Sahib Ji, the Ango Sidhu Granth Sahib on TikTok. Yeah, Sikh Women's Aid, you have to request me. I've requested you. How do I request? You have to request me to join in. Sikh Women's Aid, you have to request to join my video. I can't request you. I can only request you to join the live. So I'm just waiting for them to request me. They've requested me. Okay. So this takes a bit of time. So this should be an interesting talk, very informative from a different lens about abuse. I think they're the only Sikh women's organization in the UK. Oh, excellent. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa.
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ
Okay, so I'm just gonna start with my introduction, and then we'll get to the interview, you know. So today's topic is gonna be abuse, and like I was just telling the Sangat earlier, I think this is gonna be very informative, and it's gonna be from a lens that we're not used to seeing. When we talk about abuse, we always hear it from organizations, from men, and it's a lens, it's a solo lens that we've been fed for years and years, and this is gonna be very insightful, and I think a lot of the Sangat can really benefit from this. And this is why I wanted you guys on. So in my introduction, obviously the topic is abuse, and obviously I've had a lot of experience with abuse, but it's been like from like a vigilante street sort of level, and the type of stuff we done back in the days about 15 years ago. We targeted pedophiles, rapists, and just like stuff like that. And obviously when you're a vigilante, there's no evidence. There's some evidence sometimes, but you just have to go by the word of the Sangat, and that is quite a naive thing to do. But when you're young and dumb, you can be naive, and we did get abused and used a lot of times. And you could see on I made a video about it on my Instagram yesterday about some of the stuff that we were used and abused on. And even in the news these days, some girls, they lie about rape and stuff, and they get found out. So my story, where I first came across abuse, was my own personal story. When I was 11, we went to India, and my mum put me in bed with a cousin who was 19, 18. She didn't know about pedophilia or abuse or nothing. She was totally naive. And these are people that we don't know. She just thinks family, bronea, nothing's going to happen. So I'm sleeping, I'm 11, and about 3 at night, someone's trying to fondle me and stuff like that. And I'm thinking, what the hell? I knew it was straight away. I've no experience yet. I wasn't taught about it. This is going back years now. And it wasn't a big thing then. And I straight away, because I used to go karate and stuff, and I used to have a lot of fights, watch wrestling. Straight away, I just gave some punches and stuff. Yeah. Then he backed off. Then I didn't tell my mum or nothing, but I held the anger. But I knew something was wrong. But it's only when I was about 16, I learned from it. And then I confronted my mum about it. And I said, I kind of hated her for a bit, because I was like, how could you put me in that situation and stuff? It was a resentment. And then she said, I didn't know, but, I'm naive. I didn't know. So I think like martial arts and getting the kids to grapple and teaching them how to fight back against bullies and any sort of unwarranted touch, whether it's man, little girls or boys, I think personally that's what helped me karate. Like if someone touches you or violates you, like we wasn't taught about abuse, but any sort of touch on your body in karate, they teach you to defend and hit back straight away. So up in there, kids, they get stuck in fight or flight, and they don't really fight. They're stuck in flight because we're so mollycoddle society. We said to go and tell the teacher, don't hit back, give 3 chances. There's good Gorbachev gave 3 chances for him to get hit. These are like the stories going around in our society. So the other thing I did was, what I noticed when we was on the streets was that we're fed that the biggest dangers for Muslims and grooming gangs. But what I noticed, loads of victims were coming to me were from were being abused by other Sikhs. So whether it be in the religious setting, so it will be cases like within the family, uncles. It will be cases like I went to get prashad, the Gyani touched me inappropriately. In the Langar, the man was standing next to me and touching me. In the Nagar Kirtan, someone touched me. And you know, when there was Spartak homes, some Gyanis actually went to the bedroom where the kids were sleeping. There's been cases like that, but obviously we cover it up. We will get to all this stuff later in the talk, but just gonna give an introduction. So yeah, just bullet points that I'm giving to everybody, yeah. And it's not easy to, you know, the big pajarics that we confronted, myself personally, is not easy because they have a following, and you know, you become a target. You actually become the hated one, even when you're telling the truth, you know? So when you do make a stand, especially against within the Sikh community, within your own community, you have to kind of be ready to die, or ready to like, you have to be hardened, and you cannot be weak, weak person. So when I first saw SWA, I thought, wow, light of, you know, breath of fresh air, but this is good. But then obviously, I've been watching a lot of American TV, and then you see crazy feminists, right? And I was like worried, is this gonna be our version here? Like every man is guilty and every man is out of order. But obviously, that's not the case. But when I first saw it, and then obviously me and you had online debates, different views. We're gonna go into that later in the show, and then we've spoke on a level 1-to-1. But overall, like the as I've followed your work and seen, talk to people that are included in your work, I know that it's amazing work. You're creating a lot of inroads that should have been created years ago, and we're very behind other communities. Even though you've done a lot of great work over the years, we're still very behind, I feel, Hannah. And yeah, so obviously, and any questions we're going to answer at the end, because we want to do the interview, and the Sanghas question, we'll answer them all at the end. So yeah, take the mic, introduce yourself and what you do.
Thank you so much,
Yeah,
Malki Singh. So first
yeah.
of all, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa,
Oh,
Vaheguru
so
Ji
are
Ki
you?
Fateh,
Okay.
Sat Sri Akal, and good evening.
Yeah.
My name is Sukhvinder Kaur. I am the chair of trustees and co-founder of Sikh Women's Aid. And we've been around since 2021. Within the organization, I am also the faith and exploitation lead. So anything to do with gurdwares, Sant Babe, Mahapurush, behaving inappropriately in religious settings, I tend to lead on that body of work within the organisation. I am also a co-author on the 3 reports that we have published. So Sikh Women's Aid, when we started 30 years behind the majority of other communities. So Jewish Women's Aid have been around for nearly 30 years. Muslim Women's Network have been around for 20 years. And various organisations within the Black community, again, 30, 40-year legacy. And in the Sikh Punjabi community, we have been very unique in that we have women who work in the violence against women and girls and domestic abuse sector. But for the Sikh community to come together to provide support for women, by women, we are actually the first national collective effort that does the crisis management. Now, there's been organisations before Sikh Women's Aid that's tried to do awareness raising, or what I've always found a bit strange with our community, that men seem to be leading the crisis intervention with very, very young, vulnerable girls. And what actually got me into this work was that some of these groups that said that they were helping victims of grooming and sexual assault, that they were actually then going on to abuse girls themselves, and these were Sikh Punjabi men. So, you know, we heard about all of this. We had victims come and tell us this. And it's very difficult because you said something earlier, Mal, that when you go against a community where abuse has gone unchecked for, I would say, 2 to 3 generations in the United Kingdom, abusers and perpetrators hold more power in our community than women and victims do. So when Sikh Women's Aid launched, my car was smashed in, my house was smashed in, I had direct death threats. My husband was accused of being a paedophile. I was accused of covering up for paedophiles, because when they couldn't stop the work, what the disruptive elements of our community like to do is make you then the problem, so you become discredited. So honestly, starting Sikh Women's Aid was one of the hardest journeys that we have ever done as a group of 4 women, because we've got our own children, our own families, everything was put in the firing line. It's a lonely road when you're going to
Yeah,
do the work of challenging perpetrators, because I think something I naively didn't understand is that perpetrators hold a lot of power and influence within our community.
100. Okay,
So that's just
right. So
a brief introduction. I mean, there's lots more we can talk about, but
yeah,
as of right now, Sikh Women's Aid, for 3 years, we have been running a national anonymous helpline.
wow.
And we get calls not just from the United Kingdom, we get calls from Dubai, we get calls from Canada, from ex-UK nationals who are out there.
Mm,
So when I say that we sit in the toilet bowl of the Sikh Punjabi community, I don't say that
mm,
lightly. I mean,
mm,
we see the absolute worst elements of the Sikh Punjabi community, whilst recognizing it's not all men. And actually, women have a very predominant role in the perpetration of domestic abuse within family settings. At Sikh Women's Aid, you mentioned feminism.
mm,
It's not something. I am a grist aurat. I
mm,
believe in nuclear family. I believe
mm.
that the breakdown of the family unit is probably 80 to 90% of the root causes of all the problems that we see.
Wow.
And I just look at the language that is used to describe women by men. But then I'm now seeing women who are actually outperforming men. So if you look at the data and
Mm,
statistics in the UK alone, women academically are more successful than men. Men are struggling in school, boys are struggling in school more so than girls. And honestly, it's actually the men in my community I'm worried about, because
mm,
whatever people think about Sikh Women's Aid, I have two sons.
mm,
We as women, as founders, we are not like, 50% of us are divorced, 50% of us are
mm,
not. So
mm,
like me as a good Sikh, as a Sikhni,
mm.
the family is the most important unit.
100%.
And when the family unit breaks down, everything else, safety, security, abuse, you open the floodgates to allow shit into your family unit. Now, I want to be really clear what I say when I say that. When I say
Mm,
the family unit, I'm talking about the father,
mm,
the mother, and the children. Because
mm,
then the wife's family and the husband's family become extended family. When I say family, I'm talking about the husband and the wife and the children. That to me is family. That is your immediate family. Your partner, your spouse, and the children that you've produced together, or you are cohabiting together, with children. But then what you have extended family, I push the husband's family and the wife's family out into extended, because the very first thing that should be protected in a family is the husband and wife bond. That's not
100%.
happening right now.
Yeah.
Then if the husband and wife bond is not secure, then that bond with the children is not secure. Then what happens is children then find their parental influence, if it's not coming from mom and dad emotionally,
Mm,
psychologically, mentally, they are then given the internet in their hands in the form of a smartphone. And now
mm,
more and more young people are going towards the internet for advice, the internet for guidance. It's funny because in Dasam Granth, in Kalgi Avatar, Guru Gobind Singh Ji actually says that in this age,
mm,
there will be he goes, in every house, there'll be 3 to 4 gods. Everyone will
mm,
be worshipping their own God. And it always stayed with me, because I thought, why would Guru say that? What does he
mm,
mean by that? But then
mm,
when I look in one house where someone's following Andrew Tate,
mm,
someone's following Jordan Peterson,
mm,
mom's following some influencer, dad's following some influencer, you've got
mm,
4 Rab in one house, because your Rab is the one who influences you to develop your behavior to change.
mm.
So when I read that and then I see it manifesting in, like, I'm not going to talk about anyone else's home. I have to look at my own home first, on my own children.
100%.
Then I had to go back to nuclear family. Why are my children not coming to me with their problems? Why am
Mm,
I finding out problems about my kids through other people? So
mm,
straight away, it's coming back to center, getting the family around a table and saying, right, what's going on with us?
mm,
Why are we going outside of the family for support? And then parenting is a very serious and humbling endeavor. if you are not humbled by your children at some point, you are not doing it right. Your children should be humbling you. And when I hear parents say, oh, there's no role models for my child, well, I would disagree. Whether you like it or not, you as the parent are the first role model for your child, whether you like it or not. And we are the products of our parents' upbringing of us, whether we like it or not, because we do not have a choice in where we are born. Therefore, we do not really have a choice in how we are parented. But like something you said earlier in the conversation about, I'm so sorry to hear what happened to you at a young age, because I think it's much harder for boys to speak out about incidences of child sexual abuse than it is for girls. Girls
100%.
carry a level of shame, and I think we're really making inroads when you think about the core movement and what Preet has done in Canada.
Yeah,
She's
mate.
created a global movement, but she recognized that men equally suffered. So the core
100%.
movement is now called the core Singh movement.
Single, yeah.
And with Sikh Women's Aid, because what we had to deal with, we are dealing with the crisis intervention. We could only work with one gender. It's the way you set up charities. If you want to be a women's aid here, we only work with women and their children who may be sons. We do not work with men, but we have so many men, amazing men, who are single parents trying to do right by their children, and they will ring us for advice. So we are rooted, because we're from the Sikh Punjabi community. We know it's not as clear as, especially in domestic abuse, it's not as clear as it's all men, but it is all men that are abusing in the majority. The
Okay.
women, what our data shows, have a secondary role, and this is the mother-in-law, this is the sister-in-law. So when a woman is married into a house and when I'm talking about, I want to be really clear to the people listening, we know it's not all men. We know, I mean, we work with so many fantastic male organizations, Jazz Right, the Sikh Recovery Network. We have the National Sikh Police Association, the West Midlands Sikh Police Association. We need men. So, if we're talking about a family unit, the woman and the man need to be functioning, need to be as trauma-free as possible, so they can give their kids, they're not passing on their trauma to their children. Because the one thing I'm seeing in 80% of the casework that I see is when abuse is not disrupted, you are just passing it on. You are teaching if you are the mother-in-law that is being awful to your daughter-in-law, you're teaching your daughter to be that bitch to then her kids when she gets older. If you are a man and you talk to your wife like a piece of trash, your sons are going to be raised talking to women like pieces of trash, because they do not know that what daddy's doing is wrong or what mummy's doing is right. What they know is what daddy does, what mommy does. And it's repetitive and it's wired. I really want to use that word. It is wired. And when something is wired in the brain, that is not a thought process or a behavior that can shift easily. So what I'm seeing is men who have very little impulse control, very little patience, and then their wives do not feel safe with them. So then women then have to go into their masculine to feel safe. Then to them, then they lose attraction to their husband, because their husband is in effect a child. So they will have the child from the marriage, and they will have this adult man who cannot regulate, who cannot communicate, who cannot think to himself that, you know what, I'm a bit messed up. Maybe I need to go get some help. Maybe I need to sit with someone and become the better man or the man I'm meant to be. To be honest, every single woman that I have spoken to said that if my husband changed, if he stopped hitting me, if he stopped swearing at me, if he stopped controlling me, if he stopped telling me I'm a hoe, I'm a slag, I'm this, I'm that, I would not want to leave him. It's because of the way he treats me. I cannot have my daughter thinking that this is normal. I cannot have my son thinking that this behavior from a man is normal. So women, divorce is often the last thing that they want. I can tell you, 3 years running a helpline, women are thinking 4, 5, 10 times before they will actually end a marriage, because for them, they know they bear the shame. Because when a divorce happens, like I said, something we've done which is very dysfunctional as a community, and it's not just specific to the Sikh Punjabi community. This is a disease that is impacting all across all societies, South Asian societies. Right now, the Church of England is in an absolute meltdown because of child sexual abuse scandals. Now, we'll come to Gurdwaras and spiritual and faith-based abuse a bit later, but because we're talking about domestic abuse first, it's not enough for me to come here and say men are doing this, women are doing that. We look at root causes, because if we're not going to go back to the why, how we've ended up in this mess, I will call it, because what we are doing is we are sabotaging a generation of children that are going to come up behind us. So Mal, you and I were in the same generation. We're in the 40s, 38 to 45. We all grew up in that same era. We know what our parents did. And honestly, just looking at yourself as a man, as a woman, and be like, right, what was my father figure? What was my mother figure? If I didn't have a father, how has that impacted me? How is that impacting how I'm a father? Because my eldest was going through puberty, and oh my God, me and my husband absolutely bricked it. We were like, oh my God, what do we do? What do we say? How do we make this normal for him? But you know what we had to go back to, Mal? It was simply, right, what did we wish our parents had told us?
Yeah, that
What
makes
did
sense.
I have to learn from going out of school, teachers at school, that my mum and dad should have been telling me? And that's all in terms of parenting and trying to correct the generational stuff that was passed down to me and the generational passed stuff down to dad. We had to draw a line and be like, right, are we going to be our parents, or are we going to try and be something better for our children? Because if the one motivating factor we have as parents is that we owe it to our children to show up as the best possible parent we can be. And that can be so hard, especially when we are ill, we are tired. I mean, I have a terminal illness. Sometimes it's so hard to be the best for your child. But even if you can't be the best, just being honest with your children about how hard life is, and not allowing someone else to come in and influence your child in the space of you as a parent. You are your child's first safe space. If they can't come to you with their duck, if they cannot come to you with their sock, if they are too scared of you, then I'm guaranteeing you they are living the lives that we did, a double life behind our parents' backs.
Yeah,
And a lot of the problems we're seeing today is the consequence of living double lives. And honestly, I do not want my children doing that. I do not want my children being so terrified of me that they have to live a double life. And then what we've got to look at is the consequences of that double life for a bloke. There was no need for a double life in the way that the girl had to have a double life. Because you
yeah,
see, the
true.
girl, she's not allowed to make mistakes. She's not allowed to date someone who she thought that she was going to marry and spend the rest of her life with, for him to go fuck her over, dump her, use her. But he's never labeled the hoe or the slag. She is, because she bleeds. But when a man comes to a woman on his wedding night, what guarantee do we have that he is just as pure as we are? We have
Yeah,
a nishani of our purity. What do men bring into the marital bed that demonstrates their purity? Because if we want to go like, the one conversation I just really frustrates me is this whole culture, and how Punjabi men are like, yeah, man, look at that girl, look at what she's wearing, look at how she's dressed. Man, bitch is a hoe, yeah. And I'm like, first of all, if you're a man, why is she not your sister? And how has she become a hoe in 30 seconds? What is going on in your brain that you see a woman in a particular dress sense, or you see her in a particular setting, and the first thing that comes out of your head is hoe? Yet when we apply the same to the thirst trap men who are bodybuilding, who've got all their tops off, and who are standing in tiny kutiyan, asengs, saying, look at my body, you don't hear women going, that's a man slag. You see, we don't hold men to the standard that men are holding women to. Women actually have a lot more respect for men, because they know that thing in women, I think, is still there, where they want the best. They want the best out of their marriage and their men. But what I'm seeing is a devolution in a cohort of men. Again, I'm not saying this is all men. Like I said, I have the privilege of knowing some amazing, amazing men. Gore, Kale, Punjabi, Sikh, Khalsa, Amritari. And I know that the men out there, they are trying their absolute best, and men have their own traumas. And like, there's a lot that needs to be done around understanding what is going on with men right now. Because if the two genders I'm more worried about, resilience, women have been forced to be resilient because we've been forced to bear the weight of, I'm going to call it, bad men, fuck ups. These were the men's, our grandparents' generation and our father's generation, who married our mothers, never wanted to marry our mothers, had children with them, had no problems having sex with them, impregnating them, leaving them with a child, and then the minute it gets rough, they ran. Now, these men are probably with second wives and their second children, but the first children, so I'm the first child as well. My father got remarried and he has a second set of family, and we
Okay.
became the forgotten children. But for me, as a Guru Sikh, Guru is my Pita, Guru is my Mata, and I've never felt that lack because Sikhi, and luckily I've been blessed with such amazing Sangat that I was able to have a relationship with Sikhi, so it helps my day-to-day life. But then when I look at the Punjabi Sikh community as a collective, we are doing so amazing in a dunyavi sense. So, the wealth, the
Yeah,
careers, the money,
100%.
it's all there. Like,
Yeah.
we can go out there and really make a noise about ourselves. But what the delusion in which we think that, I mean, the one thing that absolutely drives me wild is when I hear men saying, yes, Sikhism all about equality. We give women equal rights. Well, our survey data is saying 2/3 of all women who completed our survey had experienced a form of domestic abuse. That's, so you imagine every 3 women standing in front of you, 2 of them have suffered some form of abuse. But that's not the worst, Mal. Then we asked our women, so we did a survey last year. So I just want to
Yeah.
go into that. So we
Wicked.
did a survey last year. We do this survey every year because when we first started, every kind of nindya, juggly about me, about the founders, about what our aims were, that we were embarrassing the community, we were making up figures. So what we did was we actually said, you know what? We want the women to tell us. We want the women to tell us what's happening. So we did a survey, and it was a very, very simple survey. The first year we did it, it was an academic. It was 10 questions. Have you experienced DV? If you did, who did it? How did it impact you? Did you ever report it to the police? And who was the one hitting you? And in that survey, 70% of all of the women who responded, and this is 500 women, Mal, 70% said that they'd suffered abuse. 1/3 of those women said that they'd experienced sexual abuse as children. So these are women my age and older, Mal, telling us that when they were children, they were sexually abused as children. So that was in the first year. We clocked that in the first year. Then our own community, and actually this is where I say we had more support from the men in our community than we did a lot of the women at the time, because we had high profile women, politicians, academics that were trying to shut us down. And we were expecting the hate from the men, which we did get. That was like, when we launched the first survey and I mentioned that I had death threats and then my kids were threatened, I had 5 days to leave the West Midlands because the police said, we cannot keep you safe. You had death threats. You need to get out of here. So we're at the conference, our first ever conference. My husband's family and my mum, they're at my house packing up all my house, and I had to leave the West Midlands the night we launched for my own safety. And that's because I was one of the case workers in a now infamous case where 2 granthis had raped a woman in a Gurdwara. And because that was all happening, and when our community wants to cover up the kind of the tactics that they resort to. Now, you see, when we took Umrat, we gave our head, and we kind of, ओला पहला मरण कबूल जीवन की षड आस हो सबना की रेणकाता आओ हमारे
mm,
पास. Guru's very clever on what the clear on what the bare minimum is for his Sikh Punjabi. So when I talk about domestic abuse in the Sikh Punjabi community, for me it's very clear. If you raise your hand to a woman, or if you see a woman as a whole or a thing or a product that is just there for your sexual gratification, you're not a man, you're an animal, and you're definitely not a Sikh, and you're definitely not a Khalsa, and you're definitely not Punjabi. Because I think what we've got to learn from other communities is that how the media labels Muslim grooming gangs as Muslim. Now,
mm,
I've met some amazing Muslim men who actually go out into their communities to find the grooming perpetrators to say, you are not us.
mm,
We've got to protect our girls. So, you know, when I see and I learn from other communities, you are right, Mal, something you said at the beginning, that we are probably 10 to 15 years behind all other minoritized communities in our akkad, in just not acknowledging that how bad of a problem this is. And like I said, even I've been humbled by the work of Sikh Women's
mm.
Aid, because as a trustee, I'm a volunteer, so I don't work for Sikh Women's Aid. When you're a
Okay,
trustee, you own the charity. So I own the charity with 3 other trustees,
okay,
but we all are volunteers. We cannot profit from the organization. So what we do is we appoint a team. So our team, we have 10 staff members, right
mm,
from psychotherapists to professional counselors to DV support workers to policy, to make sure we've got all our policies and procedures. We're not a Bantik organisation, we are a victim support
okay,
service. So I'm not a Sikh Parcharik. Anything that I talk about Sikhi capacity is just me as a
perfect.
Sikh. A Sikh is a
Personally,
student of God, is a student of Gurbani. So, like, you know, that is going to come out a lot in what I say this evening, but I just need to make it clear I'm not a Pracharik.
mm,
And Sikh Women's Aid is not a Bantik organisation. We are called Sikh Women's Aid because we want Sikh Punjabi women to see our
mm,
name and know Sikh Women's Aid means they'll help me when it comes to domestic abuse, sexual abuse. And we're one of the few women's aid that actually provides victims, support to victims who have suffered faith and spiritual abuse as well. So that's like domestic abuse and just how complex that is. Last year, Mal, you know, 6 Punjabi women were killed. So we had
in the UK, yeah.
in the UK.
Okay.
So we had 8-year-old Shay Kang,
Mm,
who was killed by her mum because her mum had very, very severe
mm,
mental health issues.
mm,
But the most heartbreaking thing about Shay Kang's passing was
mm,
that when we went to her funeral, the school did her funeral
mm.
because the only family, because the only family that the services knew how to contact were the mom's family, and this family did not come forward to collect the remains of their granddaughter.
Wow,
So then the funeral and the local community and the girls' school, they did the funeral.
wow.
And Mal, the way that community was crying on that girl's funeral,
Mm,
जिद्दां साडी अपनी गई आ.
mm,
I mean, it was so humbling. And I was looking at all these women, these Gore, Kale,
mm.
Indians. They knew her just as a school child, but they were mourning her, Jida Saditi Maria. And in
Wow.
that moment, I had never felt such shame in being a Sikh Punjabi, because I thought, how is it that we as a community have somehow messed up this mum's life so badly that she preferred the school do the funeral than people from her own community? So, like, we've got so much damage that has just accumulated over 2 to 3 generations. And honestly, I think it's going to take 2 to 3 generations to really heal from the damage that, you know, and like, and even we go back to our parents' generation, like, you know, you said that your mom, and you had a lot of resentment to your mom and you confronted her, but you
Mm,
were right, Mal. She can only parent you as to how she was parented.
mm,
And if no one ever told her that, look, ਬਚ ਕੇ ਰਹਿਣਾ ਇਦਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਤੋਂ, ਆਪਣੇ ਨਿਆਣਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਦਾਂ ਇਕੱਲੇ ਛੱਡੀਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦਾ, you don't leave them like this
mm.
unless someone is giving that mutt, it's not there. Like, I
Yeah, true.
remember being in school and girls starting their periods and thinking that they were dying in school
Oh,
because
bloody
they had
hell.
never seen blood, did not know what a period was. And luckily, my mum was born here and she had those conversations with me. But I remember Punjabi girls not knowing what was happening to their bodies and it happening all of a sudden. And honestly, like when I mean, at the time I laughed because I was an idiot. I was a little girl and I was like, what are you crying for? But when you look back and you think, oh my God, how many girls were raised, "Aakhe lagi da hunda ya, bardu boli da nahi hunda." And when
mm,
someone touches you up and you've been told that, you know, you can't do this, when you get married, you can do this. Munde nahi
mm,
ferna, nahi karna, nahi karna. Men, boys, they rebelled. Girls were terrorized into obeying. So what happens is some girls will be terrorized into obeying, then they end up marrying really, really. But you see what? Do you see what I mean about the disconnect? You had a suppression
mm.
of women, but then men were celebrating their liberation coming to England. They
Yeah,
saw women and they were like, "Leta, there's not just Indian women here. There's other women here,
yeah,
and they
fair.
give it up."
Yeah, they're all, yeah,
So a lot of men actually, you know, if you want to talk, you know, when men talk to me about whole culture, I'm like, well, let's go back to our fathers, the originators of the whole culture. I mean, Mal, you got Bolia about the Gauri Goandan. And
yeah,
what we did was we wrote songs about men's infidelity. We danced to these songs about Mr. Singh and his wife, you know, crying to her friend. How does the Boli go? मेरी मम्मी नू हन शक जई हन पैंदी है, you lovely Mr. Singer कह के बुलाउंदी है. And we were dancing to these songs
mm,
where women were literally telling their friends saying, my man's stepping out with me with the Gauri next door. And then what she does in the song is she doesn't hold her husband to account. She's calling the Gauri Goandana Kanjari. Kanjari Goandana Gauri ne mere maiye nu piche la liya. Like this man doesn't have a brain of his own and he didn't choose to step out on his wife and kids to have the affair. So if we want to start talking about where the breakdown of the family structure started happening, it lies predominantly with men who were forced to marry women in their community when they didn't want to. Because when our grandparents came here, it was about preserving the community, preserving the rishte, preserving the cultural identity. And what we called arranged marriages back in those days were probably forced marriages.
yeah.
I know for some
They were
parents,
both.
it absolutely worked out. Some parents are like, Jal ho. And, you know, they say, huh, Bella, we didn't like each other that much. But over the years, pyar ban gaya si. And, you know, families have turned out okay.
Yeah,
But then where the work we do, we see the absolute devastation that caused in families. And when
wow.
you have like, you know, men with like third wives and 3 sets of kids, and they are still respected. But a
Mm,
divorced woman, she don't have no respect because she was abandoned by her man. So inne apna ਘਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਸਾਂਭਿਆ, inne ਕੀ ਗਲਤੀ ਕੀਤੀ ਸੀ. So when the man was abusive, they were advised then to have children with abusive men,
mm,
knowing that that would trap them further rather than thinking nee se apni kudi ghar leke auni a. What we're seeing now women are just not staying. Now there's like, you know, if you look at the rates of divorce now, they're saying that up to 50% of couples that have been married in the last 3 years have divorced
yeah,
because that you know, we had something beautiful in our older generations, is that the institute of marriage was sacred. Like to
mm,
me, it's a sacred thing. Something my husband and I always said to us, that before we even get close to a divorce, let's come round a table and talk. And if I were to give one single biggest contributing factor, men do not know how to talk to their women with respect or with izzat or even with vulnerability. Men find it very hard to be vulnerable in front of women. And then what that instead of being vulnerable, they become angry. And then that anger, you know, it's all internalized to do with past, but you just take it out on the woman and she doesn't deserve it. I mean, she's literally given you her womb. She's produced children for you. She is the reason you have a lineage. You know, God gave that responsibility to the Aurat. Through her, your lineages will continue. And if you're shitting on her emotionally, you're shitting on her physically, you're shitting on her mentally, you've damaged your next 2 period just doing that. And I'm like, is it worth, is that ego worth it? Is that ego worth destroying your families? And the same occurs when it comes to the women who perpetrate. So guys, anyone listening, please Google the murder of Sir G. Atwell. So Sergi Atwal was murdered in the 90s, and the murder was planned by her mother-in-law. She was
Oh
sent
yeah.
to India. She
Yeah.
disappeared. And to this day, if you go into certain parts of that area, people still, they give Talian to the mother-in-law that she did the right thing.
Mm,
I'm
mm,
sorry. If we want to start killing people on Kanjar Khana, then there
mm,
needs to be no, I'm just saying, if we were to say that these attitudes are correct, that
mm.
she's a slag, she needs to be killed, she needs to be shot, then we actually got to go back and find grandfathers. And if we're going to go into that toxic mentality, then there's a whole generation of men that need to be wiped out first. So should we start getting knives and daggers and start killing men?
Yeah. So just to summarize like everything you said, the respect in the marriage, the communication, respect works both ways as well.
Absolutely.
Once that respect's gone, then resentment builds up, and then you said like the man will swear, the woman will swear. So that's important, and I'm a believer that promiscuous behavior should be checked both ways. And
Both ways.
I
Both
would teach my
ways.
sons. I would say, look, try not to have sex before marriage. Try, I'm a bit old school, traditional, like
Same.
yeah. So I would say that, but I would treat my daughter the same. So I think is the stuff that you're saying is definitely relevant for the last generation, and it's all true. But I think this generation, or it might, some of the parents, they might be going the other way. Like
Oh,
they're too liberal.
definitely. Because
They're too liberal.
you've got
Everything
young.
goes.
The
Yeah.
thing is, right, I'm at
Mm,
this point in my
mm,
life now where if you are a free consenting adult,
mm,
I
mm.
don't. I'm just like, right. Rab has given you free will,
Yeah.
and he asked you to exercise that free will with caution and care. So
Yeah.
for me, I think the saddest thing that I'm seeing in our generation and the generation coming up behind us
Mm,
is the lack of connection to something spiritual, to Sikhi, to Bani, because I
mm,
think Sikhi is is a religion of just pure truth.
mm.
That every action has a consequence.
Yeah.
Are you prepared to deal with the consequences and the garam that is created along? Because consequence means garam. Some
Yeah. Yeah.
garam you will clear here. Some
Mm,
garam you are going to come back and back and back. Now you go into, like abusing, hurting, backbiting. You're going into the space of adultery. The actual person you're sabotaging first and foremost is yourself,
mm,
because you are not designed to be a whole or a toy that
mm,
just gets used, and you should not be treating humanity as toys.
mm.
Like, especially the bond between men and women, and just the general sexualization of young people with the rise of social media,
Yeah.
with the rise of influencers. And then there is a part to play of Western feminism which I
Mm,
don't agree with, which is that men and women are equal. I do not believe that. I have never believed men and women are equal. We are not. God did not make us equal. Yet on a soul level, we are just
mm.
literally two expressions of one Paramatam.
Yes.
The feminine cannot exist without the masculine. So when I
Mm,
see men at war with women, or I see this conversation where gender gets brought
mm,
into it, I'm
mm,
like, well, if you're going to blame women, you're just blaming a part of yourself. You're not focusing on solutions. Now, for me, if I'm
mm,
looking at solutions, solutions require humility. It
mm,
requires looking at yourself so honestly. Like, when I look at men, I just feel like a cohort of men in the work that we do. Not all men. I have to keep saying this. When I talk in this capacity, I'm not talking about all men, nor am I talking about all women. Because flipping now, the Sikh Punjabi women, the strength, the
mm.
flipping resilience, what these women can endure and survive and stand and stay standing at the end of it. Mera sir jhukda hai auratan nu. When
Mm,
I go into like listening circles of women in their 70s, they're like, हाँ ऐसी तो छे न्याणे जमाए, साडा husband भी चल गया सी, ते ऐसी काम ऐसी फैक्ट्रियां 12-12 घंटे 12-12 घंटे करके ऐसी अपने छे न्याणे पालिया. Women single-handedly raised households. They ran ecosystems. So like,
mm.
when so women were doing that in our grandmother's generation. Now you've got to think, if that was the standard then, men were not raising families in the same way because men were doing the abandoning most of all, or they were drunk, or they were
Yeah.
working in foundries, or they were assimilating to migration here. So, like, if we just take blame aside, like, I'm not having this conversation to say this is a man's fault,
Mm.
this is a woman's fault. But what did start happening was women have always been held to a stricter standard than men have, which is why women today are just more generally disciplined. They can, like, when something falls apart, it's more often than not women who have to come in within the family setting to come and fix those things. But that's not saying, I'm not talking about normal families here. I'm talking about the families that end up coming into services like SWA. That
Mm.
imbalance of, like, now women are working, they're working full time, then they're looking at their kind of husband thinking, well, if I've come out the house and gone into the office, you now at least can bath the kids on a Friday, panje de chakala, hoover firla, koshkalla, because if we're doing 50-50 households that you want the woman to go out and work and provide an income into the house, then the man very naturally has to pick up some of the housework. Otherwise, you're going to have a wife who's very sick by the time she's 40, 45. She's going to have autoimmune diseases because she's constantly juggling children, work, chores,
Yeah.
children, work, chores. And then the man just gets to dip into what he wants to do.
No, that's
The
right.
woman doesn't have that. The thing is, the woman doesn't mind. We don't mind because, again, we come from lineages of fucking warriors.
Mm.
When I look at my nanny, I look at my mother, and I look at, like, the women that I've come from. Again, I must take them because whatever strength and resilience I have has come through the line. And what I want to see is I want to see resilient women. I want to see resilient men. And I want men and women coming together and forming strong families that are rooted in Dharam, that have got some aspect of Dharam. And this doesn't mean taking Amrit.
Mm-hmm.
Sikh is the first step to Amrit. Amrit is a choice.
100%.
Sikh, if you're born into the house of Nanak, you are born with a set of guiding principles that if you follow, you will be in the top 10% of human beings simply by the virtue of what your guru teaches you. But we don't do that now. Like, we now bring influences in. So the rise of Andrew Tate,
Mm.
Jordan Peterson, then you have the equivalent of feminist influences now as well. I like,
Toxic.
all this, and it's very, very toxic.
Yeah.
But again, when the family breaks down, kids are going outside of their family for influence and role models, and that's where we enter a dangerous sphere.
Yeah. I just wanted to add, the women of the past, when they had the household, a lot of them weren't working. So it was a bit more easier. But when you're going to work and if the guys they think, and it still happens, unfortunately, and I see it with my cousins and stuff, both of them will work and the woman's still expected to do all the other roles. There's no 50-50, but if both of you working, both of you paying towards a mortgage, both of you need to share everything 50-50. But if the man's got enough money and the woman's not working, then fair play. He's going
Absolutely.
out, he's going out working
Matt,
and
10
come back.
years, 10
Yeah,
years, my husband went to work and I
yeah,
happily stayed at
yeah,
home. I raised the kids.
yeah.
I was there, first steps, first meals, first tooth, teaching them ura era,
Mm,
ABC, color,
no,
shapes. When they went to full-time school, that's when I started volunteering. And even now I volunteer. My children come first. But when I started Sikh Women's Aid, my husband had to step up. And it's not something that I had to ask him to do, because the
mm,
bond between us, we've always said that I'm from a broken home. My husband
mm.
lost his dad when he was very young, and my
Okay.
mother-in-law, and bless her soul, she had schizophrenia.
Oh,
So, like, my husband brought up himself, and I came from a broken home, and
so yeah.
I know why my family broke, and I know I didn't want that. So when I sat
Mm,
with my husband, I says, if we cannot come down and talk, I don't want to go through a divorce. But if you do anything that disrespects me as a Sikhni, as a
mm,
woman, I'm
mm,
gone, because I
mm.
value coming out, the work I did to come out of trauma. I'm
Oh,
not going
wow.
to allow a man to put me back into trauma. And more women are fighting for themselves now more than ever. Women are saying to me, you know what, I'd rather be alone than ever get married to an Aparna again. Then you've got girls who are now leaving the community and they're seeking men outside of the community because they just want a basic level of respect. So I just think there's so much work that needs to be happening by families, by parents with their own children. So I'm just looking at the comments. Hi Farzana, good to see you. Sandeep, you've read Surjit's sister-in-law's book. It's an amazing book. So you've got Surjit's sister, Sarbji. She was instrumental in getting that conviction against Surjit's in-laws because she was married to the other brother. And today she runs an organization called True Honor. If it hadn't have been for Sarbji Atwal's testimony, the husband and the father would have, the mother-in-law and the husband would have gotten away with it. So it's a
Oh, wow.
really, really good book to read when you understand the dynamics and the role women play in perpetrating domestic abuse as well.
So, yeah, so I wanted to get on to the next question. I think we've covered domestic abuse. You happy with that? So, let me just check the question. I wrote some questions down. I think, yeah, you've covered most of the questions, really.
Yeah.
So on the other stuff is how does religion and faith get misused by abusers in the Sikh community?
In the same way it gets misused by people in the Catholic Church, within some of the mosques and masjids, within the mandars. If no one is following the Church of England right now, they are in a safeguarding crisis. So right now in England, there is a lot of conversation around how unsafe safeguarding is in places of worship. Now, because I know that there are so many people listening to this and they like to misuse my words, we know it's not all Gurdwara, and I'm not here saying it's all Gurdwara. But what I can say, and I can evidence in a court of law if I ever needed to, is from Glasgow to Southampton, we have got some very, very messed up people who are making very, very important decisions on some of our most holiest of spaces. And if the Gurdwara is not safe for women and girls, and I would equally say boys and men, because one of the things with spiritual and faith-based abuses, I've seen a lot more men impacted by this kind of abuse.
100%,
As in
yeah.
perpetrators, they're looking for vulnerability, not gender. If they can see a boy is a bit autistic, he's a bit vulnerable, there's not a dad there, they straight away know. Because I can tell you, Matt, as a Sikhni, even before I was a Sikhni, when I used to go to the Gurdwara, I can say to you, I have never had a bad experience. No one has ever said anything inappropriately to me. No one has ever behaved in a way with me that's inappropriate. So if I were to say, oh, well, I've never experienced anything like that in a Gurdwara before, so that can't be happening. I know it's happening because the whole reason I ended up in Sikh Women's Aid, or I got to know about the violence against, because I'm not from the violence, domestic abuse sector. I was in the Gurdwara and I used to do talks up and down the country, and girls everywhere. That Granthi, he touched me.
Yeah.
I heard that Granthi's done this, Geetani's done this, Geetani's done that. And it wasn't until I joined a national body as the executive member from 2015 to 2019, I actually witnessed some of the worst cover-ups. And it was happening in front of me. The perpetrator, so there's a very, very well-known male Pracharik, born in the West Midlands, currently doing divans in community centres because he's been banned from every Gurdwara in the United Kingdom. But what I see in faith and spiritual abuse is the sharam dikatani.
No.
There
Yeah.
have been men who have been exposed with evidence and they just disappear for 6 months and they says, oh, this was a conspiracy, God knows it's true. But what always disappoints me the most is that the loyal following that these people have, it's blind worship. I mean, Hinduan da kam ho gaya, that this Mahapurush Baba, whatever it is that they believe, that has become their guru, and they have replaced their actual guru with a human person. And to me, that is one of the biggest red flags to abuse, is when the person seeking a connection with the divine puts a man or a woman in front of that seeking. Now, Sangat is one concept. This concept of Mahapurush and Sants and Brahmagyanis, you know, Brahmagyanis were the people who wrote in Guru Granth Sahib Ji, Bhagat Kabir, Bhagat Ramanand, Adas Gurus, Sheikh Farid. These are Mahapurush Brahmagyanis, but now we've got overweight, fat fucks who are illiterate morons and who've called themselves Sant. And because they've called themselves Sant, we start calling them Sant. And then we start like engaging in like ritualistic worship of a human being, which is the very thing our guru tells us not to do. So the lack of the prachar of Sikhi right now, to me, is like just very, very low level. Because if we were a community where the prachar was working, we wouldn't be in a situation where I would say the West Midlands especially is probably the hotspot of just complete abandonment of safeguarding. I mean, I know 3 meetings that have taken place in the last 2 weeks, cover-up meetings. And what's happening is granthis are being moved around the country every time an allegation of sexual abuse, sexual assault. The woman is called the Randi, the woman is called the slag because she was single, she was vulnerable. And what I'm trying to get through here is that the kind of women that these men go for are vulnerable women, women who are innocent, women who are naive, women who are never taught by their elders or anyone around them about how to safeguard themselves. Because some women, especially the older generation of women, it is the man. Bande di jutti needs to be outside my house. Without a man, all that is true, but it was meant to be the man who is actually a man, not the boy child trapped in the body of a man and whose actions and behavior are that of a spoilt little boy. And this is the scariest thing that I see in grown men, is that they behave like infantile boys. But then when I look at their mothers, and like I call this like Hai Mera Munda. So we know in the Sikh Punjabi community there's a preference for the boys. Hi kudi jamgi, chal koi na, agli baar rab. I mean, that stuff doesn't affect me because Guru knows what an aurat is. Sikhi knows how divine the aurat is. So when a buddhi comes, and like, you know, Punjab used to have some of the worst female infanticide rates in the world.
100%.
So, you know, for us to, and I'm from Wolverhampton originally, New Cross Hospital had to stop revealing the gender of babies to Indian parents because the amount of sex selective abortions that were happening in the 90s. So where we've moved to now in 2025 is that you can go to India now to have the abortions, and it's still happening in pockets. It's not as widespread as it was, but we do get helplines. What we have now is the woman, the in-laws thinking that the woman decides the gender of the baby. Now, I have to say this tonight, that scientifically, the production of a fetus is 50% the father's DNA and 50% the woman's DNA. The gender is selected by the man because the man has the Y chromosome. Man has Y and X, woman has XX. So the only gender that has the ability to select the boy is the man, because he holds the Y chromosome. And when the chromosome is X and Y, that's how a boy is made. So the biggest illiteracy in our community is thinking that it's the woman's fault when a girl is born. First of all, it's just assigning fault to a gender. I mean, we come from a community. We come from a community where, you know, thousands, you know, even I would say hundreds of years ago, if a couple found a child abandoned on the road, they would pick that child up and go, "Rab di dena, Rab ne minu bachcha ditta ya," and they would take that child home and raise it as their own. We've gone from being that kind of people to now saying, "Sanu kudiyan nahi chahidiyan, sanu munde chahide ya." And then what happens is when these boys are born, by virtue of being a boy, no one's giving them akal. It's like, no. So you have this mom who finally gets the son. So she has now had the stamp of approval. In munda jamadita, she's now saved herself from a lifetime of gala. Ask any mother who has had all girls in her household in the 90s and how awful it was for them when it was their husbands impregnating them. So, the level of unpad in some aspects of our community is still very much prevalent today. The boy child preference is still absolutely there. And what happens is when you have mothers who never had a good relationship with their husbands, they then hyper focus on the son. The son becomes the best friend, he becomes the husband. And then when it's time for that husband to get married, the mom simply cannot cope. It's like, that bitch has come into my house and she's taking my son away from me. And then you hear, like, it's become a joke in our community. We've got Bolian Kodni me Sasakutani, it's so normalized, right? We wrote flipping songs about it. We never dealt with the issue, but no, we wrote songs and we started dancing at weddings that my mother-in-law's a bitch, but it's okay because we can sing about it and we're going to go home back to the same dysfunctional family environments. So for me, I look at all of this and everything I've talked about, it's a little bit of everything that then creates the perfect environment for domestic abuse, sexual abuse, and faith-based abuse. And the biggest problem in the Sikh Punjabi community is not sexual abuse by grooming gangs, Mal. It's sexual abuse by a husband, a boyfriend or spouse, an uncle, a chacha, a
100%.
cousin, dada, nana, and in some cases, and we've had cases, Mal, where it's the fathers raping their own daughters, young little girls. And
It's crazy.
that's where we're at. The biggest risk to any Sikh Punjabi girl right now are those within the immediate and extended family setting. And this is true because the NSPCC have done research on this. The rape crisis centers across the country who work with rape and sexual abuse victims, they tell you this, the data tells you this. But when you talk to our community, the only kind of victim that ever gets respect is the one who's been raped by a Muslim. Because, oh, Musalman ne rape kita si, so you know what, Pachari. But then when it's the Dada that's raped her, tu ki kar di si. I mean, there's one documentary, guys. If you watch the Pooney sisters, it's called Because We Are Girls. These were 3 sisters that were all sexually assaulted by a cousin who lived with them from India for 10 years. And they talk about, they had told their mom and dad so many times, and their mom and dad weren't interested because of the bestie. And they felt the bestie of their daughter being abused, but they didn't feel the anger that someone who I trusted came into my house and touched up my daughter. So fathers started being ashamed of their daughters rather than being ashamed of the kanjar who did the raping, or where to watch Puni Sisters. Pooja, hi. Thank you for joining us this evening. And you can watch Because We Are Girls on Amazon Prime. It's free. And if you've got an Amazon Prime account, it's on there. The documentary is called Because We Are Girls. And I tell you, Mal, I sobbed when I watched that. Yes, Andy. Their parents didn't get it. There's a scene where all 3 daughters confront their parents. The mom apologizes. The dad, Chal, okay, मैं ही मारा या. And I'm like, dude, your daughters were raped by your brother's son. And no one ever addressed the perpetrator in the family. And this is why now, Malhana, we've got rapists, child rapists roaming free. They're at the Gurdwara, they're at your functions, they're sitting on flipping committees, they're chalaing your wajeh. They are so integrated into society that it's honestly scary. It really, really is. And the way I parent now is very different because of this.
Yeah, and no one really goes to the police, do they? A lot of the victims, they don't fight back, so it goes unscathed, and I find it very frustrating. There was a case that we had years ago. I don't want to say no names because obviously you're on the video. Normally I would, but he's very famous Pacharik, very famous, and he abused a kid. So when the kid came to him, he was broken. So we gave him support and stuff. And fair play to him, he went and confronted the guy and beat him up and everything like that. But it's like, if there's no police justice, there's no street justice, there's no justice at all. The geezer or the Honsta, he'll keep doing it more and more. The more he gets away with it, the more he's going to keep doing it. So I just wanted to ask a few other questions. Yeah. So how can the Sikh community work together to break this silence around abuse?
It, it's actually really easy. When
Mm,
you're seeing it happening around you,
mm,
call it out. Because I'm
mm,
telling you, if 60% of women are telling me in my survey, it's a lot closer to all of us than we want to accept. And brothers, if your sisters are going through this, flipping bring her back home.
mm.
Do not ever leave her to die in that house. Because now, another thing I wanted to mention, Mal, something that isn't spoken about, is how many Apni are committing suicide because of domestic
Oh wow,
abuse.
I
And
didn't
then
know that.
because she's, yeah,
Mm,
right
mm,
now, the data shows that suicides are overtaking murders now. The more women have just had enough.
mm,
And I would go again, what I would do is, if anyone follows the core movement,
mm.
please search the case of Mandeep Kaur. This was a
Mandipur.
woman who had spent
Mm,
10 years being treated like a piece of trash by her husband, by her
mm,
in-laws, and she had two girls. And the father, Ranjot Beed of Mandeep, he now has custody of those two girls. And he used to call those two girls, and I'm really sorry to use this word, it's such a disgusting word, but these are his words. The daughters
mm,
he has custody of today, he said to his wife at the time before she committed suicide, ਮੈਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਭੈਣ ਚੋਦੀ ਕੁੜੀਆਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਚਾਹੀਦੀਆਂ, ਮੈਨੂੰ ਮੁੰਡਾ
mm,
ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਆ, ਤੇ ਕੋ ਤਾਂ ਮੁੰਡੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਵੀ ਬਣਾ ਹੁੰਦੇ. And she got driven, and like he beat her, he psychologically wore her down. She didn't even do anything to him. And eventually she made a video and she committed suicide. And now those two girls are left with him as their sole parent. And Core Movement tried everything to get those children placed with their grandparents. So even the law and the justice system in this country is so broken. And
yeah.
what that does is it emboldens perpetrators. So you asked what the Sikh community can do. Start believing women, start standing by women, follow the evidence, follow the trail.
Mm,
Because when a woman comes out and says, I've been raped,
mm,
she gains nothing.
mm,
Yes, you talk about false cases. There are
mm.
cases of false cases, but I want to give
Yeah.
you the data around that.
Mm,
So the National Chief Police Council,
mm,
they looked at all recorded crime. 2% of rape allegations made to the police were deemed
mm,
false,
mm.
where she ended up getting prosecuted for making false allegations.
No.
2%. That
Mm, mm.
means 98% of the reports made to the police evidentially had some merit, even if it didn't go to CPS and
Yes, I got
result
you.
in a conviction. So when we look at false accusations, and it's not as big as people think it is,
Mm,
it's because when you're only talking about that one thing, like I said, right now, everyone's talking about grooming gangs. There's been
mm,
an inquiry into child sexual abuse in the
mm,
United Kingdom. It was called the ICSA inquiry, and
mm,
they looked at religious. Two Gurdwaras gave
mm.
evidence into that inquiry, Singh Sabha Southall and Guru Nanak Gurdwara Smethwick. I'm just going to say all that report is available online, and go look at how our Gurdwaras represented themselves in that inquiry. We had
Wow.
victims who gave evidence into that inquiry as well.
Wow.
And one Gurdwara, yeah, I know all the Gurdwaras. Like I said,
Mm.
the amount of stuff going on in Gurdwaras, spiritual faith-based abuse, there is no place for a middleman between a Sikh and his Guru. The only middleman you will ever need between a Sikh and his Guru is someone to teach you Santhya. And the only
Yeah.
purpose that that person has is to help you understand Gurbani, so you understand what your Guru is saying to you. Outside of that, no one should be influencing you to live your Sikhi in a way. Because like I said, we have caste-based Gurdwara in this country. And if that is not a biggest failure of Sikhi in this country right now, there is not a bigger one. Sikhi specifically abolished caste. It cusses out caste so much. Our Allah noor paya kudrat ke sab bande ek noor pe sab jag upja kaun pade kaun mande. We gave a middle finger to that and set up Ramdasiye, Ravidasiye, Ramgariye Gurdware. But where does all that come from? Caste discrimination.
Yeah, it does
Like,
come there.
so if you want to start looking at the problems of our community, it all starts when jab e gaye biparan ki reet main na karu inki prateet. Right now, it's like everyone just thinks covering up and suppressing it's going to work. What you're doing is you're just like, it's like a pressure cooker now. Han siti bajanda samaya. I've said this for 3 years. There
Mm.
is a reckoning coming in the Sikh
Yeah,
Punjabi
I
community.
could feel it as well,
Yeah,
100%.
like when you're looking at grooming gangs and people are saying Muslim grooming gangs, trust me, ਸਾਡੇ ਵੀ grooming gang ਬਥੇਰੇ ਇਕੱਠੇ ਬੈਠੇ ਆ. The
Yeah,
immigration grooming
yeah,
gangs, there are
yeah.
men from India that are sexually assaulting autistic young girls, impregnating them and marrying them at 16, 17, so they can get an entry into this country. The obsession with men from India coming in, and I'm not saying it's all men from India. My
Mm.
dad and my grandparents were from India, so I'm not making this as a blanket statement of all migrant men or all migrant women. This is in the context of abuse, that we have come across grooming gangs set up across the country, and what they do is move. There are Amritari men in Gurdwaras facilitating contract marriages
Mm.
between very vulnerable women and very nakamme men, so they can get permanent residency here. Then when they're in these marriages, they know it's a contract marriage, but they start raping the women in the marriage, and this is all being facilitated by Gursikhs. But then what you also have is the visa immigration route. So you've got committee members that are bringing their relatives into this country as granthis and kirtanis and ragis to get them pakke here. And these people are not granthis, they're not bhattis, they can just speak English, speak Punjabi. So there's so many. So Gurdwaras are on ticking time bomb, because if you think you can carry on like this and you're not going to get called out, well, 2 Gurdwara have been taken to court this year because of their
Wicked.
safeguarding practices. I can't say too much about that now,
No,
but this is going to become more and more common because women are
it has to.
finding their voice now, and it's not going to be shut up and put up anymore.
A lot of boys get abused as well. Young boys.
Oh,
Yeah.
and it's much harder for boys to speak up
Mm.
because we're a women's only service.
You can.
We don't have that, but when we did the first survey, we asked for men to contribute,
Mm.
and the amount of men that said this is the first time, because I know it's anonymous, I'm disclosing the fact that I've been sexually assaulted, and
Yeah.
I genuinely I fear for those boys, because if you're repressing trauma,
Mm.
you are likely to be very angry. You're going to have some sort of substance misuse issues. You're going to be seriously traumatized. And I just want these young boys to get help and support. There's amazing male-only organizations called Mankind. So if there's any
Okay.
men listening to this tonight, there is a
Mm.
male-only domestic violence service called Mankind.
Okay.
And you can reach out to them, and they provide male therapy, male support. And I honestly think, and to the men in the community, I'm saying, where are you, fam? If you know men are being abused and men are suffering domestic abuse, and I've always said women need to look after women, men need to look after men, and as a community, we come together to help the community heal. We can't keep being at war with each other, because that doesn't solve anything. And if you want to talk about solutions, when you see it, deal with it. When you see it, call it out. Don't just sit there, ha, Sanuki. Our community loves seeing tamasha everywhere else, but we will never sort out the tamasha that's going on within our own homes and families. We know
Yeah.
something's kicking off. I know 5 of my cousins will get down together and get that girl out straight away. Every girl in my immediate family. Why doesn't Sikh Women's Aid ignore domestic violence from now? You're right, we don't ignore it. You just answered it in your question. UK Technics. We don't ignore domestic violence from female siblings. Any victim that comes to us who is subjected to domestic violence, if it's her husband, if it's her mother-in-law, and what we see more than the siblings is actually the sister-in-law. And then we deal with that. If you read our reports, it's in there. We are one of the only organizations talking about female perpetrators, the mother-in-law, the sister-in-law, or the mum in some cases as well. If it's adult family violence, if it's like the parents hating on the child, that's called adult family violence. Then you have intimate partner. It's very important for victims to speak up, and that's the key message here. The only person who is protected when you stay quiet is the perpetrator. You are not going to gain anything from staying quiet. And if you
Yeah.
are trying to stay with violently abusive men for the sake of your children, what you're actually teaching your daughters is that this is okay. And when she grows older, she's going to look for men like her dad, because that's all she knows. And if the boys tend to go 2 ways. They either follow in the footsteps of their father, or they're so traumatized they don't want nothing to do with their father, and they have like an identity crisis, and they struggle within themselves. To me, neither outcome is good. And I'm just saying, sometimes, and I've seen single dads raise children really well because that dad was a good dad. He wasn't the toxic parent. More often than not, I see women. I mean, I spoke to one woman who literally was working 4 jobs to put both of her daughters through private school. So she goes, and then when I asked her, I says, why are you doing that? Why don't you just send them to a normal school and not put yourself through all of that? She goes, because when I married my husband, my mom and dad said to me, ਜਦੋਂ ਤੇਰਾ ਵਿਆਹ ਹੋਗਾ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਤੈਨੂੰ ਪੂਰੀ ਆਜ਼ਾਦੀ ਮਿਲ ਜਾਣੀ ਆ. Your husband, your family, they'll let you do everything. And she goes, I believe that. So she goes, I did my GCSEs and I believed my parents, and I got married at 18 to the first guy they found for me. Because they said to me that when I get married, my life is going to be made. She goes, I trusted my parents. She goes, I had no job, I had no qualifications. She goes, now I clean toilets, I clean office buildings, I do this job, I do that job. She goes, I do not ever want my daughters to be financially insecure. So when you break down the family unit, you are pushing girls who traditionally might want, I mean, like, you know, for me, the purpose of this is not to enforce my views on anyone. I know what I'm like. But what these situations do is then you create hyper independent masculine women who don't need men, because what they've learned is, yeah, that's exactly how parents sold marriage. You can't do anything now, but ਜਦੋਂ ਤੇਰਾ ਵਿਆਹ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਪੁੱਤ ਤੈਨੂੰ ਸਾਰੀ ਆਜ਼ਾਦੀ ਮਿਲ ਜਾਣੀ ਆ. And what happened was, when women brought into that and they got married and then they faced a life of double suppression, they're just like, this isn't what I thought life was going to be. And this is where it can go into divorce, it can go into suicide, it can go into autoimmune diseases, because ultimately what you have is a very unhappy man, because no happy man is going to be abusing his wife and children. No man who's content and secure in himself is going to be hurting his wife and kids. And if that woman is constantly on edge around that man, she's never going to feel safe with him. So then automatically she goes into her masculine, because then she's only got herself to depend on. And when you create a hyper masculine women, they are too scared to trust men. So they would rather do everything by themselves. And then what you find with this cohort of women is that they can be very successful. But then as they get older, they develop autoimmune diseases or they have health complications, because it is so stressful trying to do everything by yourself. But then we're pushing women into the, you know, we seem to think, oh, women don't want men. No, that's never been the case. Men are attracted to women. Women are attracted to men for the family unit. It's the way God created us. So when that's not working, it's because of the behaviors of one part of that equation. Now you've got women who are just flying because they understand trauma. Men are now realizing they're not those special high mide Monday that their mummy made them when they can't hold down jobs. When I see a 30-year-old man in front of a PlayStation or a games console, and I'm like, mate, there's so many things you could be doing. You could be in the gym, you could be running a class, you could be having a Punjabi lesson. There could be so many things that you are doing that could improve you as a man. And you're sitting here like a pubescent, spotty teenager playing group Xbox with another group of 30-year-old men. And I'm like, wow. And then it's like, you know, when I see women who become hyper obsessed with their appearance, I think, why? Why is that happening? Because again, you know, when we look at Punjabi music culture, how are women referenced? Luck 28, kudi da 47, wait kudi da luck prandi. You know, everything is focused on how a woman looks. And like, you know, when we look at the hip hop culture, we look at society, we look at social media, everyone is being overloaded with information that does not help them in any way, but ultimately is more detrimental to them. So, you know, when you're born into the house of Nanak, I say, you were given a head start, and somehow we've managed to piss all that away. When we're in our 3rd year of our survey and 1/3 of our women are saying that we were sexually abused as little girls, I mean, Mal, I've got the data here. If you just bear with me, this is what women told us in 2024. 61% of all respondents experienced domestic abuse. It was 62 the year before and 70 the year before that. 75% of all those respondents said that they'd experienced more than one form of abuse. So they were being physically assaulted, they were being mentally assaulted. So you're being assaulted at all angles. And that's sexual abuse. So I want you to understand this is 1/3 of our UK population of Sikh Punjabi women. Potentially, this could be 33% had experienced sexual abuse. Of that 33%, Mal, 54% said it happened to them as a child, 30% said it happened as an adult, and then 16% said it happened to me when I was a child, then it happened to me again when I was an adult. So what you have there is 70% when you do the age breakdown, because we asked for age categories of when the abuse started. 70% were under the age of 18 when the abuse started. So that is now statutory rape. 32% said that it was a one-off incident. It happened once and it never happened again. 68% that said the abuse happened more than once. So what I want you to imagine there is these women who were sexually abused multiple times, and who was the perpetrator? 28% spouse, boyfriend, husband. 26% uncle, family friend. 17% cousin, male. 14% extended family, male. Grooming gang, 1.5%. Online grooming, 2.5%. There are your stats, Mal, and that stats has been consistent for 3 years. So we're not saying there isn't an issue with grooming gangs and paedophiles. We're saying that our girls are more at risk from the people around them.
Yes, standard. Even our
Standard.
children. Yeah.
Yeah, we
So
know
just
this.
that, yeah. So just to summarize some of the stuff. So what I've picked up from that was like, when you enter a marriage, sometimes women and men don't have the knowledge of how to, or sometimes mistakes can be made.
Mhm.
Yeah. So sometimes I think before giving up on the marriage, try therapy, get rid of your traumas, go couples counseling, and if things don't improve from there, then maybe think about it. But at least sometimes it's good to give it a chance because people can learn from mistakes, and some people, we're not given a booklet on how to live life. You
Absolutely.
do have to make mistakes. You have to, when you're a kid, before you walk, you fall down, then you get your balance.
Absolutely.
When you ride a bike, you fall down once. So in a marriage, don't be too harsh. Just once you can lie one space for one or two mistakes, and the mistakes might correct without counseling or without trauma. But I do recommend that we all pick up trauma in this day and age.
Yeah.
From our parenting, from schooling, from bullying, from insecurities. There's a whole host of things that you will get some sort of trauma. You know what I mean? So before you enter a marriage, get your own trauma sorted by therapists, and then if there is a problem, get couples counseling and give it a go, especially if you've got children, if there's major red flags or there's danger. But even sometimes things can be redeemed, and there's couples that have successfully redeemed the situation and the
Absolutely.
mistakes haven't been repeated, long as the whole climate changes and the toxic environment is gone.
That's it.
So,
That's what this is about.
yeah, yeah.
Removing toxicity from the home. Because when
Mm,
you're going out into your work environment, society nowadays, I mean, the world's going mad.
mm,
If you are not safe in the four walls of your home, surrounded by the love of a partner and the love of your children, you are one of the poorest people in the world. And what really shocks me is what I see then play out in the family courts, where you've got men. I mean, what I always find is like, if you're in this place where you've divorced your partner, stay the fuck out of their lives. You are co-parenting children. Like what a really scary thing that we're seeing now is men who are abusive, who then leave their wives and they separate, they get divorced, and they're amicable until the point that one of them wants to move on.
mm,
And that's when you start seeing like it finally hit one of the spouses that maybe this wasn't what I wanted to do. Maybe divorce wasn't the right angle. But rather than sitting down and having sitting down with a therapist and being like, you know what, my man's moved on and I'm not coping well with it. My wife's moved on, I'm not coping well with it. What they start doing is becoming they start like doing really messed up things to each other, and all this comes from a place of trauma. And I'm watching some of this and I'm like, but you're the one who left. So this is the person who is the reason of the divorce, is now having a problem with the other person moving on. But like what I find more is then this is where, like, and when I think about domestic homicides, because I'm a domestic homicide review chair. So anytime a woman is murdered in the United Kingdom, there's a statutory requirement that if the death was by an intimate partner or domestic abuse was involved, a homicide review is conducted to see what, if anything, could have prevented that by the services that were involved. And the standard pattern in the Sikh Punjabi ones that I've sat in, without saying too much, is the man has fixated on the idea that his wife is having an affair and he's killed her because of that. And then when I've sat through the trial, that poor woman wasn't having an affair with anyone. It was his paranoia, because he was so terrified that she was doing what he was doing. Because when
Yeah,
you go through the trial, in the trial it came out that he'd been booking prostitutes for the whole 30 years of the marriage, but he killed her because he thought she was being unfaithful. And that
wow,
poor woman
crazy.
had done nothing but be faithful to that man.
And she
So men's
probably
own
knew.
paranoia. And
She
now
probably
we've
knew he
got,
was cheating as well. She probably knew he was cheating and still was
of
faithful in it.
course, because where does a woman go? Because a man can cheat and stay in the marriage. A woman, heaven forbid, she even speaks to a man at work, she's a hoe. If she goes to work with a sleeveless top, she's a hoe. I mean, I was telling you some of the things I hear on the helpline. If she's, what are some of the things I've heard? She's brought a new car, it's because she's got a man. She's got a new job and she's brought a new wardrobe because she's celebrating, oh, my divorce is over. She's finally feeling a little bit feminine again. She puts on a dress and some high heels. She's fucking checking next man. She's checking next man. And then I'm just like, what is going on? That you're divorced, she's no longer your wife, but you still feel like you have husband rights over her. And it's like, that's controlling and coercive behavior. That can actually be, it's a criminal offense now. You can go to jail for that. The law is going to tighten up so much, and you're seeing it, Mal. A Granthi has just been sentenced to 24 years in jail in Hitchin for the historical rape of children. Men are now going to jail for beating their wives, raping little kids. There was a man in Smethwick. He was done for childhood sexual abuse. These are men with beards and turbans. It's happening. The prosecutions are happening because women are finding their voices now.
That's
Eventually,
good.
there's not going to be a space for perpetrators to hide. And like, you know, but my message to the men, if there are any men listening, hey, you know, you're our Jeevan Sati, you're our brothers, you're our sons. Like for me, I have the Sikh view, I have my husband, so you're my brothers. You're my sons, you know, you're older than me, you're my father, my grandfathers. And like, you know, when I'm talking about all the filth in my community, this is my community as well. I'm embroiled in this filth. I grew up in this filth. And you know, we don't get any satisfaction. We have to do the hard job because we're the first. We're the ones that are actually going out there and saying, right, this is a problem. We're not protecting women when they're the abusers. We're one of, you know, the very few voices that talk about female perpetrators. And when government agencies are talking about perpetrator intervention and perpetrator programs, I'm like, how would you have got a 70-year-old Bachchan Kaur who organized her daughter's mother-in-law? Would you have got her in a perpetrator program? Would you have even seen her as a perpetrator? Because the old Bibiyan, the mother-in-laws, I mean, they do some messed up stuff. Some of the stuff I hear from women is absolutely shocking, but we have never hidden from that. We've never hidden that. If you read our reports, every single year we're saying, hello, you need to understand that when the police are getting involved and a banda's hitting his wife, you better be looking at the mother-in-law as well, because more often than not, the mother-in-law, if she's not a victim of that son, she's a perpetrator alongside him, because it's the dynamics that are at play. So we are concerned with the patterns of perpetrating. Men are the predominant perpetrators in our community, like all of the communities. The data points that way. When we ask the question, 80 to 90%, it is men. Even all the sexual abuse questions we give, the domestic abuse questions we give, whatever male options there are, we give respondents the female options as well. Were you raped by a sister? Were you raped by a cousin, female cousin? Were you raped by?
Yeah, it
They
happens.
weren't.
It does happen.
It does happen, absolutely. I
Mums
mean,
do their own children as well. I've heard of them cases. Yeah.
absolutely it does,
Mm.
but they are in the minority.
Minority, yeah, yeah, it's true.
Minority. But then when I hear some men talk about it, it's like, yeah, women are just as bad. And it's like, mate, no,
Nah.
they're not. They ain't killing.
Mm.
You go look at the
Mm.
homicide daters. Who's doing the killing of the spouses? It's the men. We, ऐसी तेनू गाला कढ़नी आया, ऐसी तेनू nag करना आया. I mean,
Mm.
women, we
It's not
assert our,
dangerous.
it's not dangerous, go do your
Mm.
fucking head in. But again,
Mm.
we'll only do your head in because when we've asked you nicely, you ain't listening. We know
Mm.
we know what our roles are because it's been bloody ingrained into us from before we were even born. Genetically, we're born serving bloody men. We don't mind doing it. Just be a fucking man. To all the abusive
Yeah,
men, I'm saying it to.
no, but some women do have daddy issues, and
Massively, they
they
do.
and they come from a dysfunctional family, and the man does get treated bad. The baseline ain't a good start.
It's not.
So that's what I'm saying. The therapy thing. That's what I'm saying. The therapy thing.
Absolutely, and
Start
where
on a
the
good baseline.
I mean, you look at the data from
Mm.
Mankind
Mm.
and you look at the way females perpetrate, and there's been prosecutions of women now going to jail for murdering husbands, not in
Mm.
the Sikh Punjabi community. There was one case in Derby, I think there was, where there was a woman who poisoned her husband because she was having an affair
Well,
and she tried to top
yeah,
him off
yeah,
in India. And
yeah,
she's
yeah,
on death row now in
yeah,
India. We covered
yeah,
that. We
yeah,
covered that on our page. We
yeah.
shared it because we were saying, look, this is the other side to it. Because
But it's
ultimately, what is
rare.
the aim of Sikh Women's Aid? Honestly, mate, I want to be without a job. One day, I want to be able to shut down Sikh Women's Aid and say, you know what? Our community, the men have transformed and taken ownership of their shit. The women who are traumatized and where they are engaging in dysfunctional patterns, we've managed to help them
Yes,
because women's dysfunction originates from a very different place to a man's.
young
But the
age, from a
trauma
younger age.
is from a very, very young
Mm.
age. And for me,
Mm.
it's about healing and producing an offspring and a generation of strong, resilient, nice, decent human beings. I mean, that's not nothing bad to want. For me, the success of Sikh Women's Aid is when we are no longer needed, when I'm having to say, right, you know what? Sadi community sudhar gaye. But when I look at the Jewish community who've been doing this for 30 years, and I look at the Muslim communities that's been doing it for 40, I look at the black community, fifth white community, 60, 70 years, they haven't managed to fix it.
Skull jog is always going to
Do
happen.
you know what I
And
mean?
crimes have been happening since all the Guru's
Absolutely.
times till now.
But child abuse
Even the
has been
Guru was alive.
happening since the Guru's time,
Yeah,
men abusing women.
sons. Yeah,
It's, why do you think women used to kill themselves in times of partition? Women were throwing themselves down wells because they knew that the male cohort, the way they express violence is physical, it's sexual, it's violent, it's aggressive. Women's aggression does not manifest normally in the same way. We manifest aggression in a different way. Ours is not life threatening in the way that a man's aggression manifests and can end life so quickly. You might
mm,
end up with depression by being with a nagging wife.
yeah.
Therapy can sort
Mental,
that.
mental
You
health, and
stab up a woman because you've lost your temper in the space of 30 seconds. You've destroyed your children. You've destroyed everything because for 30 seconds you lost your shit. That's how much poor impulse control is in men right now. And this is men across the board, not just Sikh Punjabi
yeah.
men.
What I noticed is, look, I don't know if anyone knows about biomechanics. I'm just giving an example. So if you've got a tight muscle somewhere, they call it a dysfunctional muscle. It's tight. It's not working properly. It's not got the flexibility. That muscle will affect your whole walking pattern, and eventually it will affect your whole other muscles. Some other muscles tighten compensation. In a marriage, if there's a dysfunction and it's not addressed, dysfunction equals dysfunction equals dysfunction. Years of dysfunction is going to erupt one way, whether it's through affair, having an affair, violence, breakdown, depression. So the dysfunction has to be corrected. So people
Absolutely.
have to take ownership, and they have to get, even if they have to, they might, and it's hard to recognize your own dysfunction. And if your wife tells you you're dysfunction, she's going to tell you in a way where you get more offended, yeah, or vice versa. Sometimes you just seek a third party, come to your dysfunctions and address them dysfunctions. If you don't, then you are going to go separate
You see,
ways.
that's
And then you come,
interesting what you say there, Malhana.
yeah,
Me
yeah,
as a woman,
hmm,
if my husband, when Dee comes up to me and says, you know what, Suk, I don't like that about you, I
hmm,
trust him more because he's been by my side for 15 years. If he knows my dysfunction, I know he's telling me out of love
hmm,
because he can see that dysfunction is going to bring out something bad in me. It's like right now he's listening on this live and he will
hmm,
give me feedback because I honor his views and I honor his opinion. And me, I want every single girl and I want every single man to have the best marriage possible because our
hmm.
guru sanctioned that relationship. It was the one space, if the world is against you, you should be able to walk through your front door and know that your tribe is waiting for you. And there is so much power in a nuclear family unit. And as now, you know, this liberal kind of YOLO, anything goes, you know, it's not YOLO. Sikhi does not, you know, as Indians, YOLO, you only live once. No, that is not true. You
We
will
don't.
keep coming back. You are
Yeah,
YOLOing. You'll be YOLOing for the next 100 lifetimes. So I'm like,
yeah.
sometimes I just look at the way we perceive our dysfunctions. And now we have this big celebration of dysfunctional culture. YOLO, I'm going to like pump up my face with this because I'm insecure. And I'm like, I've seen some beautiful women.
Destroy
Like I see the
themselves.
paranoia and insecurity. I see
Destroy themselves.
beautiful women pump their faces with stuff. And I'm just like, but why? You were so beautiful before. Like, honestly, like your natural beauty is becoming a rare thing now. But then I'm thinking, what's driving women to this? You've got
It's
men with
social
the porn
media. Social
addictions.
media.
So
Yeah.
and you know, any kind of I've studied pornography because I have two sons and I need
Hmm,
to understand what my sons are up against and what you are dealing with. Like I read a fantastic researcher. They're saying that the way porn is produced, it is not produced as a learning activity. Like most of the participants in any pornography scene that you're watching have taken cocaine, have taken some sort of drugs, so they can withstand the abuse that takes place in the filming of
hmm,
pornography. And
hmm,
our boys, unfortunately, I think one of the biggest dysfunction, the disservice the fathers did to Indian men is not sitting down and having the conversation about puberty, men, literally, you know, not thinking with your dick brain
hmm,
and thinking with your higher self. You know, you have your brain, your mind, the man is governed by senses, so everything that is external to you is fed into your mind and you are in this loop. So then what you're not doing is you're not tapping into your buddhi or your higher conscious. So you're these, you know, very low level, you know, humanity now, that everything is instant gratification, everything is about likes, it's about what other people think about you, when actually inside you're not very happy with yourselves. So like, you know, if we're looking at dysfunction and, you know, you get married and you're in a situation and it's not working for you, honestly, most things are fixable if you're willing to do the work on yourself. Don't go into a marriage saying this is wrong with you. If there's something very clearly wrong with your spouse and he's violent and he is aggressive and he's hurting you and he's harming you, and the same if it's a female, that is abuse.
hmm,
You have not been put by God on this earth to take shittar from anyone. You
hmm.
are here to have a divine experience in a human body. And right now, we are not as a community having divine experiences in human bodies. Like, you know, the way culture has seeped into the spiritual spaces, there's a massive. So, like, Mal, I'm just going to switch my camera because I want to show this statistic from our survey. I'm not sure
Hmm.
if you can see
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
So look, the question we asked our respondents here was, who was your primary perpetrator? Right at the top of there, you have a spiritual teacher or a Mahapurush.
100%.
Yes, so
I agree with that.
our victims have told us that every role, so we've got Granthi, Pati, Pandit, astrologers, we've got a Gurdwara Sevadar, committee member,
Hmm,
we've got partner, family, in-laws, and what people told us there are, these are daughter-in-laws, sister-in-laws, whose family members sat on committees while abusing them, Sangat members, Kathavachiks, Parchariks, community groups, Kirtani, Gatka teachers, Shastra Vidya teachers, volunteers at a Sikhi camp, a Punjabi sports club, and even Sikh ethos places of education and academies. So what you've got there is that perpetrators are operating at every level of a faith setting or a faith leadership structure. So when I see statistics like that, Mal, I am straight away thinking, who is running these spaces that is allowing that level of abuse to be perpetrated in our most sacredest of spaces?
Yeah, when I was doing all the street pachar, we had Singra. Obviously, I didn't do it on a professional level, but because we were for streets, a lot of the street youth used to chat to me. We had the page, and I could totally whatever you said. It was the same 20 years ago. We was getting the same
This is
feedback. Yeah.
2024, Mal. So that was
Okay.
20 years ago.
Yeah,
This
20
is
years ago. Yeah.
2024.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
what that tells me now is that who is in charge of our gurdwaras? And at what point, because I have to ask myself this a lot, as a Sangat member, like I'll be very honest now, I do not send my children to the Gurdwara alone.
Yeah.
I do not go to a Gurdwara unless there's a function and I'm forced to go. I have
Mm.
now literally turned my home into a Gurdwara, and I
Yeah.
make sure that
A lot of
any
people are
Sikh,
doing that.
any Sikhi that my children are going to learn is going to be from me and my husband. And I have a trusted group of circle outside of that are my children. If I can't answer your question, you can go to Mamaji here, you can go to Chachaji there. Here are the people I trust for you to get your gyan from. I did an amazing charity called Turiya Charity. I spent like £1,000 and I brought every Sikh Itihas Sikh book myself. We've got to step up as Sikhs. Like, I'm not a Pracharik, but I
No.
know enough so that when my kids have a question, they can come to me. And I don't ever want to be in a position that I can't answer my children's questions, because now with the rise of online influencers and online prachar, and like my children are not allowed mobile phones, they are not allowed access to the internet until they are 18. both of
Yeah.
my both of my boys have a little Roadman, the little Nokia
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
1310s.
Drug
Literally
dealer
all
phones. Yeah.
they literally have that to make calls and texts, because
Fair
I'm like
play.
because I'm
You're
like
safeguarding them.
I'm like, Geezer, the internet is a space that I cannot regulate. And there's a massive onus on social media companies and the way the internet is regulated. We tested this. My husband works in IT. He put in
Mm.
every lock, every protective measure for my son. And then one day I sat and then we tried to do soft searches, like we put
Mm.
in boobs,
Mm.
women. My
Mm.
son could still access inappropriate images even with all the filters on.
Oh,
So now what
okay.
we did was I got the idea from my martial arts teacher. Actually, I went to his house and I saw that he had a computer with the screen could be seen by everyone in the living room, and all the children did their work on that one computer, and that's where all the
Mm.
homework was done. So no devices, no laptops in
No,
bedrooms,
fair
no
play.
phones in
That's a
bedrooms
good idea.
at that age until they're 16 and 18 and they understand more of the world. But high school is such a precarious age. I remember thinking, oh my God, my kids can walk, talk, they're potty trained, they're in school.
It's easy. It
Flipping
gets
high
harder.
school, the
Yeah.
stuff my kid was coming back home and telling me,
It's
Mommy,
different.
what's trans? Well, there's a girl
Mm.
coming to my school and he said that he's a she,
He's a
and then
cat.
I was and then we had a dog, and you might have had the cat, but we had one that's saying that there were a dog in school, and my boy's autistic, bless him, and he
Yeah.
was like, Mommy, there's a boy who says that there's a dog in my class, and then I was like, oh my God. And then
It's
I'm like,
crazy though.
like
Crazy.
the conversations we have to have with our children, but be aware of what's going on in the world. Be present parents. And if you're not able to be a present parent, own it and be like, why am I running away from my family and my kids? Am I not happy here? What's not happy here? What's not working here? Because what we also have now is the functioning dysfunctional households, where the mom and dad have made an agreement where it's like, you're a kanjar, I hate you, you're a
Mm.
nagging bitch, I hate you, but we're going to stay together until the kids are 18 and then we're going to go our separate way. But the
Mm.
amount of dysfunction that they subject their children to
Messes
until
their
that
life
child
up.
reaches 18. I'm
Yeah,
just like, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਹੀ ਛੱਡ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਇੱਕ ਦੂਸਰੇ ਨੂੰ.
yeah.
Why have you damaged your kids by normalizing that kind of, and they genuinely think that they're doing something good for their children. I'm of the opinion that if you're functionally dysfunctional, what you said, Mal, get into therapy and see if you can function.
Fix it.
There
Yeah,
is
yeah.
nothing that can't be fixed if you are not
Most things
willing to
can.
lower your ego. Because if I come
Most
back
things
down to
can.
one thing, it's ego. Now, fuck
Yeah.
you. I don't need you. I can divorce you. And this is more prevalent in males, I find.
Okay.
I can get next bitch. I can get next girl.
Mm,
Because it's that kind of disposable. Because again, you know, dad's third, second wife, granddad's first, second wife, whilst also, you know, knocking on the local prosy down the road because it was something fun to do.
mm.
And no one ever held the man to a set of standards. Guru Gobind Singh Ji, he holds his men to standards. He set the damn standards. Now, when I look at men, like more recently, we are getting so many calls from young girls being harassed at Nagar Kirtans, being
Yeah, yeah,
harassed outside Gurdwares, being
yeah.
harassed in Langar halls, being harassed in car parks at Gurdwares. And like these girls are going to the Gurdwara to seriously connect. And now you've got this big melting pot in areas like Wolverhampton, Smethwick, Birmingham, where you've got this next generation of migrants that have coming in. Then you've got the migrants that came through Europe and have come into UK. You've got a melting pot of so many messed up values and belief systems that are at play. And then you've still got a cohort of girls who are very uneducated about consent, about rights, about saying no, about how there's actual so much power and strength in telling a man to go fuck himself when all he wants is to have sex with you. And I would say, like, you know, women and promiscuity, and in the way that women have been overly policed, as in girls who never did anything wrong were called slags. So then
Mm,
eventually what you do is you create a self-fulfilling prophecy in girls that actually I was the good girl and I was called a slag. I married who my parents told me to marry and he called me a slag. And now you know what? I might as well just be a slag because I'm being called it anyway. But I've had none of the. I've heard girls tell me this, and they say, "Well, if I've already got the label as a slag, I might as well go enjoy the men because I'm not getting anything. I'm being called a slag, but actually I'm a really good girl." But it's so easy for a man to be like, "Yeah, ho, yeah, slag," and it sticks. If I start going around calling every man a kanjar, yeah, kanjar at kanjara, like, you know, but if women started normalizing that bully towards men, then you'd see violence go through the roof because men can't handle it when their own
mm,
behaviors are called out. And I'm not calling it out to say we're better than you. I'm saying in the same way, if I as a woman can recognize that mother-in-laws and sister-in-laws also contribute to the abuse of women and men, then why the hell can't men acknowledge that actually we are a privileged gender? We have privilege. You can stick your dicks anywhere and you will get away with it. No one's holding you to account. And that dysfunction, none of you should be behaving promiscuously, the
mm.
man and the woman. Promiscuity should not be the benchmark of, you know, oh yeah, that geezer man, he's got a body count of this, she's got a body count of this slag. And it's just like, hang on, so his body count adds to his rep, her
Yeah,
body count adds to her disrespect.
yeah. They say low value woman, innit, when you got a higher body count, but the man is the opposite. The higher body count, the higher the value
See,
is.
that doesn't make
It's
sense to me
absurd.
because
Nah,
to me,
nah.
we've just got
Mm.
two genders that are absolutely disrespecting themselves,
Doing the same thing,
disrespecting the city, doing the exact same thing. So
different
for
value.
me, and what I'm also seeing, Mal, the place to have these kinds of conversations where we start talking about the uncomfortable things, we start talking about the really messed up belief systems across genders. Not
Mm,
saying, right, one gender does this and they do it more, this gender's the pajare. When it comes to domestic abuse, our women are seriously suffering. The data says that. But we can trace all that suffering back. But we also now, men are suffering in a different way because you lot were
different
spoiled brats.
way.
And now you're so used to being spoiled, when someone isn't spoiling you, you don't know what to do. Then you get angry, then you get into strops. And they're like, I mean, this is how pathetic it is. We had one guy who literally, his wife had twins. She was exhausted. She had twins, and she had a C-section when she had the twins. Husband just wanted sex, and she goes, "Gee," she goes, "मैं थकी हाँ, मेरा हरे सारा heal नहीं होया. I can't." The doctor said. He rings her mom in India and goes, "Your slag ass daughter, she's like, yeah, she's just had babies. She can't give it to me, so she must be giving it to next man. Your daughter's a hoe, your daughter's this." Then he rings his mom and going, "Yeah, simply because she said to him, I'm not healed from the pregnancy."
No,
Because
it's crazy.
it's not because he's so used to having his demands met. And to me, I was just like, so he rang mummy saying, "Mummy minne dindini inna gal kar," and
Crazy, man. How could you even say
I'm
that to
like,
him? Yeah.
geezer, you rang your mom and your mother-in-law because your wife said I've had a baby and I'm physically unable to be intimate with you.
C-section takes time to heal, man.
Do
6
you know
weeks easily,
what I
more than
mean?
that.
And like I hear some of this stuff and I'm just like, thank God these are the minority of men and they're not the majority. But then you start to think, well, okay, so this is the 5th phone call I've had now with something similar to this. And then you start thinking, what the hell is going on in the minds of some of these men? And then ultimately, then, you'll have you'll have some just really heartbreaking cases because these things are fixable. So many things are fixable.
Yeah.
Like the case I just gave you, that woman just needed to leave that bloody man, but she wouldn't. She goes,
Yeah, it's
"Nee,
too much. Yeah.
she goes, once the 6 weeks have passed and we've started having sex again,
You'll
everything
be
will be
fine.
fine." Because all she's been taught is whatever he wants, give it to him. The amount of women, especially my mum's generation, it was like, bas, jo banda chaunda ya kar, ਬੰਦੇ ਦਾ ਰਾਜਾ ਤੂੰ ਹੁਣ ਵਿਆਹੀ ਆ ਇੱਥੇ ਵਾਪਸ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਉਣਾ ਤੇਰਾ ਮਰਿਆ ਹੋਇਆ ਮੂੰਹ ਅਸੀਂ ਦੇਖਾਂਗੇ so marrying your daughters off to strangers then telling them that that's your home now, this is no longer your home. How is she ever going to leave that situation? Because this is another thing I hear. Why didn't she leave? Why didn't she leave? Why did she say she's so thick for staying? You don't know what risk assessment that woman's doing in her head and what she's scared of. She's more scared of leaving, so she stays. So she already knows the minute I leave, he's going to kill me. He's going to take my kids off me, or he's going to make it so bad for me that I'm basically going to be like the village Rundy in the community.
But do you think that still happens now in the modern generation? I think women have more
Oh,
power now.
mate, today's generation, you know what they're doing? These little knobs have taken it to the next level. So these, like, I call this like small dick energy, Hannah, because if your marriage isn't working and you're not happy and you've decided you don't want to be with your woman, be a man and own up to it and just say, right, you've messed up her life now because she's honored to you. If you're the man and you're deciding you don't want to be with this woman, right, that's fine. Or you've done something to that woman and she's decided she's going to leave you, that's it. I now men set up fake dating profiles on websites so they can show relatives. Because obviously they're worried, oh no, so what they do is they set their wives up. The worst kind of
That's
perpetrating
crazy.
male I've seen is the bank. So this is the investment banker who's got a 7-bedroom house with a double garage. He married a girl from India 20 years ago whilst having a bit on the side. It was the Gauri girlfriend. So he explained to his Gauri girlfriend, look, I've got to marry this girl. She's the one my parents want. But, once we've had the kids and my youngest is 16, I'm going to leave her and it'll be you and me. And I've seen this play out. So the dad and the mom make an agree. The boy and the mom make an agreement. He's like, Ma, मैं कुड़ी ना ब्याह कर लूंगा. And he goes, तेनू अपनी नौ मिल जूगी. She doesn't want a no, she wants a slave. So she wants someone who's now going to pick up the housework so she can go out, chill at the Godora, the Keaton program with her other aunties while her house is being taken care of. So we had one woman who had been married here for 18 years, had 3 children. The mother-in-law, basically, as soon as she arrived, put her to work. All her wages went into the mother-in-law's bank account. And for 18 years, that continued. Then the mother-in-law and the son raised the children while she was working 12-hour shifts and they were living off her money. Then they raised the children to call their mum a bitch and a freshie. So they call their own mother freshie, bitch, freshie, make my roti bitch, this is
Yeah,
how
yeah.
they were talking to their mum, make my roti bitch. And there's a daughter involved in this as well, a 16-year-old daughter, make my roti bitch. Oh, fucking freshie. This is what happened when your mom's a freshie. I mean, the reason that case stayed with me, because I was like, these are children talking to their mother. The 16th birthday of the youngest child, the husband and the mother-in-law start being really nice to the wife. And they're like, India jana rishte milan no? India jana ya? And then she's like, yeah. Took her to India to the bend, took her passport off her, ripped up the passport, her left her there and came back. So we had to work with another organisation to get her back in the UK. But then when we asked this girl, what road do you live on? She goes, मैनू नहीं पता, बस मैनू चला के सारे पासे लेके जांदे हुंदे सी. We were like, what kids do your schools go? What, do schools, doctor? She goes, मैनू नहीं पता. She goes, oh, मैनू लेके जांदे हुंदे सी. And then when you spoke to her, she still spoke as if she was living in India. Yeah, she'd
No.
been in the country for nearly 19 years. And it was one of the most, and this man, bachelor's, master's, educated. Now, last, because obviously I don't get involved in casework as a trustee, but the
No.
last I heard that, we were trying to get her into refuge, trying to get her into a house. He's knocked up with them. Gordy waited patiently for 16. They ran
Yeah,
off into
similar.
the sunset
This is a
together.
very similar story to my mum's story is the same.
Do you
Exactly the
see what
same.
I mean?
Yeah,
That
so
that
it's
that
yeah,
that generation of men
yeah,
are a root cause of so many fucked up
yeah.
children, men and daughters. Imagine having that kind of a father that literally set the mum up to please everyone else and had no
Exactly.
intention. You've ruined her
My,
life
my,
completely.
my dad did it twice. He done it twice. Married not one girl from India. She left, and then he done it with my mum. But he always had that gaudy girlfriend.
Yeah, always on the
Yeah,
side.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
but he would never be held to account, though, will he,
no,
Mal? Your mom
no.
had to carry the shame. The other Indian woman had to carry the shame.
Yeah. Look,
Gauri Pachari, she's chilling.
we
She's
ended up
chilling.
council states in East London. You know,
Now that's what happened.
and all
I
the shit
know
that
women
went,
who ended up in the refuge system,
yeah,
young girls
yeah,
who basically, because their mom wouldn't let go of the dad despite everything he was doing because she'd been programmed. I know children, families of 4, 6, our children are in the care system now, and there's not enough Sikh Punjabi families fostering.
yeah.
Check out the work of
But
Khalsa Fostering, another organization that is trying to encourage Sikh Punjabis into the fostering arena and the adoption pull, because so many kids are being abandoned. Because then you've also got this generation of Indian national men who married European women for the visa. So I remember Harjap Shah, I
oh
love you,
yes,
Julie.
yes.
Remember he would do the Harjap was talking about this years ago. The immigration men were hooking up with Goria, having children with them, and once they got the green card Pakkai here, the wife was abandoned, the child was
Child was
abandoned.
abandoned. Yeah,
But now that the mother's then abandoned, and now there's a big influx in the care system of mixed race Sikh Punjabi European children. Mixed race Sikh Punjabi children are flooding certain foster areas, and they're being adopted into families that are not Sikh Punjabi because
yeah,
our people have this obsession with boys. We don't even want our own blood girls, let alone, I mean, I know adoption is becoming an uptake thing, but there's a real snobbery in some parts of our community. Coon, coon, hundaya. And I'm like, bro, the way you lot are killing each other over land and assets and inheritance, innit? Adoption, the babu, dur di galla, to look at a child that you never birthed as your own and raise it as your own. That that
pardon.
that that's a beautiful thing to do, and I just wonder where our community is with all of those things.
Yeah,
I just think as a community we're at a moment of reckoning, and I think things are going to get a lot worse
before they get
before they
better.
get better, because these conversations are not mainstream.
Yeah,
Do you know what I
no,
mean? And
no,
what we're arguing as mainstream, again, like I said, the conversation, like the amount of Punjabi men that jumped on the Muslim grooming gangs targeting Sikh girls. And look, we're not saying that that isn't an issue. Grooming gangs will target vulnerable girls, Sikh, Gore, Kale, Muslim, Hindu. ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਤਾਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਕੁੜੀਆਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਛੱਡੀਆਂ. That's the first thing you got to remember. And please don't call them Muslim grooming gangs, because if you meet a true Muslim, they are the opposite to these monsters. These are not Muslim.
It's good and bad in all.
Any more than Sikh domestic abusers are Sikh. I mean, I don't even want to call them Punjabis, because if you're going to behave like an animal or a Rakesh, that's what you need to be described as. So the way we even talk about these things and the way we label them, we've got to be so careful, because we do such a disrespect. I'm very clear. If you're hitting a woman, if you're abusing a woman, if you're a domestic abuser, male or female, you're not a Sikh, let alone a Khalsa. And if you are in a Gurdwara and you are part of these cover-up committees, the kind of hell that awaits you, I honestly fear for you. Because you, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਖਾਲਸੇ ਬੈਠੇ ਆ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਦਸਤਾਰਾਂ ਕਿਰਪਾਨਾਂ ਪਾਈਆਂ ਆ, and ਤੁਸੀਂ, you are covering for the people who are abusing women and girls and boys and children. It is in crisis in certain parts right now, especially around the Birmingham Midlands area. There is so much happening in the Gurdwaras right now, and it is all being covered up by men who wear kirpana and gatare. And unfortunately, there are women who are also helping these men cover up as well. So,
Yeah,
like,
they
you
don't
know,
even.
and just like, you know, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸ਼ਰਮ ਨਾਲ ਡੁੱਬ ਕੇ ਮਰ ਜਾਵੋ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਹੋ ਜਿਹੇ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਨੇ ਆ ਕੰਜਰਖਾਨਾ ਦਾ ਘਾਟ ਨਹੀਂ ਬਾਹਰ ਦੁਨੀਆ 'ਚ there's so much kanjarkhana happening in the world. Take your turbans off, take your kirpana off and say, you know what, ਸਿੱਖੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਲਈ ਬਹੁਤ ਔਖੀ ਆ ਕਮਾਉਣ ਲਈ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਲੈ ਲਓ ਵਾਪਸ ਅਸੀਂ ਖੇ ਖਾਣੇ ਆ ਦੁਨੀਆ 'ਚ and go and do it. Ain't no one gonna stop you. God gave you free will. But when you wear the robe of my father and then you go and cover up for the, you know, the dirtiest of human beings on this planet, you deserve the reckoning that's coming to you. You genuinely do. Because Mal, I have worked with these people who are still covering up today, and I said to them, "Tusi badalo, tusi apne aap vich badlawa leke aavo. We need to sort this out. Our leaders need to become leaders. We have a real deficit of leaders in the community right now. No one is leading, no one is sovereign, because when you're sovereign, it is a lonely, lonely place. Guru gave us sovereignty and we chucked it back in his face. There should be no reason why the Sikh community cannot police its own perpetrators.
Yeah,
Absolutely no reason. Musliman, I'm not sure if you've heard of the bearded bros.
yeah.
These men are going out policing their own, and they also help other communities to police their people. When you look at the way the Muslim community, after the grooming scandals, when they first kicked off, there's still a problem with it now. But what you see in the Muslim community, what I see, especially in the work I do and I work with the agencies, and I've been to visit some mosques and masjids as well. Like, there's one masjid I've been to where they actually have a completely separate women's part of the mosque. And then the men, they've given those women, so there's a committee, they've given them a budget. This is, look, I don't know what the budget was, but let's say it's 250K. They're like, right, here's your budget. Get mental health advisors, get maternity nurses in, get healthcare providers in, get IDVAs, immigration, lawyers, legal, whatever the women need, they're getting it from the mosque.
Wow.
So, you know, when we look at Gurdwaras and now, like, you know, there's small initiatives like the 13 community clinics, but that's spot here and there. Right now, I would ask every Sangat member who has a relationship or a link to a Gurdwara, what is your Gurdwara providing you and your children? And you have the absolute right to go to your Gurdwara and say, right, who's your safeguarding lead? Where's your safeguarding policy? How many safeguarding concerns and complaints have you had in the last 12 months? You as the Sangat, you always held the power in the Gurdwara, but somehow we just handed it to committees, and the Gurdwara was never meant to be run by a committee system. And the way Gurdwaras are regulated is they can do whatever the hell they want.
Yeah.
But what happens in that is our children, our women, and some of our men and boys, their lives are being ruined in the place that they came to rebuild their lives. So the place that they're going for spiritual connection, they are being abused in those settings. They absolutely are. We've got a bloody database full of cases.
There's one case in Southall where the Santia teacher was put in this fainting on the Hazuri. You know, when the kids were doing Santia, and he made them put Hazuri on, but it made them faint, and then he was abusing them. And that was getting taken to court. But the police had all the evidence, the phone tracking, the searches Googled for the poison that was used. And I think the victims were paid off or they were threatened. They didn't turn up to court.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
happened with another I'm going to call him a so-called aspiring politician. So there was multiple instances where he had been behaving inappropriately with girls while he was at university. There was 10 charges against him, and that man's dad, very well known, went round the houses of all those girls, and you know what he said? And this narrative is so successful even today. ਪਰ ਤੇਰੀ ਕੁੜੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਵਿਆਹ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਕਰਨਾ ਆ ਜਦੋਂ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਬਾਹਰ ਨਿਕਲ ਗਈ? Because again, he does the raping and the abusing, but the honor is all between our legs. So when a man forces himself in between our legs, why the hell is our honor lost? It's the honor of that man.
Yeah.
We've never ever held the rapists and the pedophiles and the abusers, because like we've gone past the point of, oh, Wahita, I'm sorry. This is time for bloody absolution now. We need freaking damages. This is how bad this problem is, because the psychological, you know, Mal, you always say to me that girls don't speak up. I have that frustration. But when you've had 3 generations of girls terrorized, ਜੇ ਨਾ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਬਾਹਰ ਨਿਕਲ ਗਈ, ਤੇਰਾ ਵਿਆਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਣਾ, ਤੇਰੀ ਇੱਜ਼ਤ ਪੱਤ ਗਈ, you don't bleed on your wedding night, you're a slag. You know how many girls that were raped as little children who didn't then bleed on their wedding nights were battered by their husbands and called slags? That's something else that isn't discussed. How is she meant to tell her husband on her wedding night, actually, when I was little, my chacha penetratively raped me, that's why I'm not going to bleed on my wedding night? Because of men's obsession with women's purity whilst doing nothing to nurture their own purity. Like, what pure man's ever going to come to a woman? Well, you're going to say to us, oh, yeah, oh, I'm Guru da Sikh, I have never been with a woman. And honestly, the dusty men, like, you know, sexually transmitted diseases and the filth that is going, that the men are passing on to women. I mean, the pure promiscuity and the rise of platforms like OnlyFans. And recently I was reading, like, there's women on OnlyFans that go outside universities literally offering themselves to men. And it's the South Asian men that are queuing up at the front of the flipping line.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
They're being offered it free on a plate.
Yeah.
Where is that man's discipline to be like, "Bhene, tu ki kar diyan?"
Yeah.
Like, you know, like when the one thing that frustrates me the most is whenever I hear that incel part of our community, oh, look at her, hold this, hold that. And I'm like, first of all, did he penny? If your sister walked through the door like that, would you be like, the fuck you wearing, you slag? Is that how you talk to women? Is that your value and belief system? Like, if I've got a problem with a man, I'm going to be like, Paji, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ? ਮੈਨੂੰ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਆਦਤਾਂ ਚੰਗੀਆਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਲੱਗੀਆਂ. I'm not going to be like, you dirty little waste man, what the fuck you? It's like, we're not designed that way. But when you start to address us as someone who pays and sells their body in exchange for sexual intercourse, which a woman isn't, just because she's like, the best way to describe, I was laughing to my husband about this because I was on some sort of live, it was a TikTok thing, and I just had to switch off because of the way the language. Yeah, I saw this girl, yeah, and she was wearing like skinny jeans, and I was thinking, what a fucking slag. And I'm like, well, I wear skinny jeans with fleece under them because I don't want a breeze to go baggy trousers. Because the one thing in winter that's horrible is when you wear baggy clothes and you get drafts in them. So, like, you know, men are thinking that we're standing in front of mirrors going, yeah, I've put this skinny jeans on because I want a man to stare at my ass. You do not understand, women. We are not going out there into the world thinking, yeah, I want men to look at me. That's why I'm dressed in this way. Half of the time, we're thinking, you know, it's been such a shit week. It's been so stressful. Cholo, मैं सोनी dress पा लेनी है आज. Or you know what? I'm gonna wear those jeans because it makes me feel good. Most of the times, we're not thinking outside of ourselves. So when I hear men talk like that, I'm like, you don't even understand women as a gender. You don't understand how our minds are different to yours. How we don't like men are objectify women. Like, you know, one of the biggest things that I always hear is like, you know, tits and ass this, oh look at she's showing her chest, she's showing her backside. And I'm like, well, no, but you might find those things sexually appealing. We don't think of men in the same way. We're not looking at ourselves through your eyes. Like, there's nothing attractive about a man. You know, your sexual organs are not attractive at all. So when, like, you know, some poor girl's messaging us on the helpline or ringing us saying, this Singh is sending me pictures of his dick, and I'm just like, mate, what on earth makes you think that women want to see this? Half of the time you're sending these disgusting, nasty
Yeah,
ass pictures of your crusty private areas that you probably haven't even washed. And you think some woman's going to look at that going, oh yeah, I'm going to give it out to you. Give us some fucking credit. You know, we can see that that's a little scutty little road man. I mean, it's the lowest form of male behavior when you send unsolicited pictures of your private areas to women thinking we're getting a kick out of it. If anything, most women gag and block that person because it's not, women are not looking at the attraction of a man. We are looking, is this man a man? Will
mm,
he be a father to my children? Will he keep me safe? Am I safe? These are the core fundamental things that women, I'm not speaking on behalf of all women, but from my colleague, you know, I've spent a lot of time with women. I've spoken to elderly women. I've been to Sikh societies, and women are telling me about their feelings about men. And women are looking for commitment. They're looking for a man who's a man, a whole man. They're not looking for perfection. They're looking for, you know, someone who's decent, who's got values, who wants to raise a family with them. And, you know, they want to work out the problems together, not like go in with conflict or have a superficial thing. Like, you know, I'm just seeing the rise of the big fat Punjabi wedding where I'm just like, you know, a wedding costs like £300,000 and then the marriage is over within 6 months. And then I'm
yeah,
thinking, right, what happened to these Ananda Garages courses that were promised 10 years ago? You know, there is no divorce in Ananda Garage because Sikh is a very practical religion. Other religions have divorce clauses. You have an Ananda Karaj in Sikhi, and men have this belief that we've done an Ananda Karaj, yeah, so yeah, your ma. One geezer, one Amritari man actually says, I don't care, you can divorce me, yeah, bitch. This is Amritari. This is how he spoke to his Singhani. Yeah, you can divorce me, yeah, bitch, but we've had lava, bitch. Yeah, I'm gonna be in your life till you fucking die, because we've done lava, bitch. And I'm like, what do you think Guru gave us lava to keep us imprisoned to men like you? The
yeah,
minute Guru gave you akal, because when your man stops being a man and he starts being the cause of your pain, your Guru does not require you to go through anything to walk away from that. Because if there was a requirement, it would have been put into our Maryade. The here is the clause for divorce. Guru relied on the common sense of women, and Guru had more respect for women than men have respect for women. Sikh men have respect for women. Because Guru knew women were brought up in Maryada. The original Amrit Sanchar, women didn't take Amrit. Why? Because men knew, Guru knew, Bande Jangali Janvara, they need to be brought into Maryada, they need to be brought in discipline. A daughter is first born into the house of her father, she lives by his rules. Then she's married into the house of her husband, then she lives by his rules. Then she has children, then she is serving them. Only once her children are married and they've left her home and she enters, like I'll probably say, the menopausal period, does she finally get her life back? ਬੰਦਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਤਾਂ ਆਜ਼ਾਦੀ ਤੇ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਆਈਆਂ. We understand discipline in a way men don't. Generally, there are exceptions to this. I'm not saying that this is generally, I'm talking generally.
yeah,
There are exceptions. There are women who behave like men. There are men who are absolutely in their absolute toxic femininity in their behavior. There are women who are hyper masculized. because of trauma. There are men who are hyper feminized because of trauma.
Mm,
It's a big melting pot of trauma. So obviously, I
yeah,
see the women's side more, so I'm here to
yeah.
represent that, whilst
No, I get that.
recognizing that men suffer as well. We do recognize that. We've never shied away or hidden that fact. We've never lied about anything that is truthfully happening. That's not who we are. But we are here for women and their children so that they are out and safe. Because when it comes to domestic abuse, it is the women who are more likely to be killed. And if last year 6 women were killed alone for our community, and one of the perpetrators was a committee at the Gurdwara, and
No, no, violent.
had Guru Granth Sahib Ji upstairs when he battered his wife downstairs to death.
Yeah, but men are more violent. If you look at all the jungs in history, it's men. All the violence in the street is always men, and
Men?
we are physically different, emotionally different, logically different. You know, like I said,
And
there's
you know what?
exceptions to the rules, but
There's a strength in that for
yeah.
men. You are physically stronger
Mm,
because you are the protector of the
mm,
family. You weren't meant to
mm,
be the one beating on the fucking family.
mm.
The man starts beating on his own family, then there's no dushman outside. The whole jung has become within the house.
No, something's
And once the,
gone wrong. It's mental health or trauma. Something's not right in it. Everything's out of sync.
of
I just
course,
wanted to I just wanted to touch up on some stuff. I've got three more questions left.
go for
But
it, mate.
I want to touch up on some stuff. So, um, like, like before, before people get a divorce and stuff, it's like try to do the therapy and like I said, there's exceptions to the rule. Like when it comes to dress sense or this or that, there's gonna be a man that just takes his top off, jumps in the swimming pool or jumps in the sea. He's not there, but there's gonna be a man that wants the attention from the girls, and he will just take his top off, oil it, and he wants that attention. There's the same scale in women as well.
Of
There'll be women that
course,
generally so there's exceptions to the rules and stuff as well, you know. And
there is. Of course, there
yeah.
is.
And on a lighter note, with the console thing, I just want to give you a different narrative.
I'm so sorry,
No,
Mala. You're a PlayStation dad.
no,
I'm so
no,
sorry.
yeah, I want to give you a different narrative. If the guy's lazy and doesn't do nothing, is couch potato, doesn't go to work, and's on
That's what I
benefits, and
meant.
just
That's what I
yeah.
was talking about.
But sometimes a man plays console. Like it's a bit of an escape
Mm.
because women hate men that play consoles and they kind of say, "Oh, you're not a kid, or you're a nobody, you're a loser." But imagine he's done a hard day at work, come home, help the woman out, and he's done his rear ass or whatever, and just half an hour at the end of the day, just a little escape, just to fade away into another world. And it's a relaxation, and if there's studies on it, it does reverse depression and anxiety. So not every man that plays consoles is a loser. Like
Yeah.
give him the half an hour a day. Yeah, give him that
Yeah,
half an hour.
like I
All right,
said, I would
unwind.
never ever say that every man who plays a console is a loser. I
Yeah, yeah,
understand that men absolutely need stress relief because when you are
yeah,
the provider, and I see this
yeah,
with my husband. So, I mean, Mal,
yeah,
you know this, and
yeah,
I've had my doctors diagnosed me with terminal cancer in 2019.
yeah.
But my husband at times is my carer. And I
Mm,
absolutely see the days when my husband is just like, he's done a full day of work, he's made sabji, he's made
mm,
roti, he's fed the kids, he's fed me, he's bathed the kids, he's done the homework, and so I've given 10% to that family because I'm not well that day. My husband's
mm,
picked up 90. So what
mm,
I always make sure that when I'm better, I'm like, right, Dee, I'm gonna take the boys out for the day. You have the day to yourself. Just chill out, relax. And my husband, he likes gardening, so we're just an anti-console house. We don't
okay,
like
no problem.
football. We don't like consoles because I have 2 autistic boys. And I
Okay.
remember someone brought a console into my house, and I literally had 2 nightmares of children when I
No, it
saw what
makes
the
it work.
console did to their brain.
Yeah, it
So
makes the
then,
nervous system work. Yeah,
yeah,
at a young age.
that got kicked out of my house straight away.
No.
But I absolutely appreciate, and most women do, Mal.
Mm,
When the man is stepping up and
mm.
he needs that escape,
Yeah,
a
escape. Yeah,
logical, loving woman is not going to deny him that
no,
any
fair
more
play.
than the loving man who does, like my husband, when he does that 90%. I'm so thankful for that because I work in a field where it is the man can struggle to give 10% to a marriage. So doing the work at Sikh Women's Aid and seeing the things that are out there, honestly, I'm learning. It's humbled me so massively. It's
No,
humbled me in a
wicked.
way that I have to
You
come back
appreciate what you
home and
got.
I'm like,
Yeah, you
right,
appreciate it. You appreciate it more, innit? Yeah.
Absolutely, because when I see the abject suffering that some of our women are put through and how they still stand, I'm like, I don't know if I'd be standing. You know, I can handle the health issues, but if the man that I loved and I had dedicated my entire life to and I'd had his children is stepping out, is beating, is telling me I'm fat and I'm ugly or I'm not good enough for him, it's worse when it comes from your spouse, because that's the person you basically signed up to a lifetime with. But lifetime don't mean nothing now. That's the thing. The family unit is breaking now, and
It's gone, innit?
breaking because the foundations that are needed for marriage, whether it's our community spaces, whether it's our religious spaces, we are not talking about this in a way that is open, that is honest. Because, like, look, Matt, you and me, we probably disagree on 40%. I'd say we're 50-50. We disagree on 50% of things and we disagree fundamentally on 50-50. But we're still being able to come onto this live and talk about things, me being able to take your view on point, you being able to take my view on point, and walk away from both of this knowing that I know what I know, you know what you know, but we're here for a bigger purpose. That is
100.
community.
Yeah.
You know, we're doing this so that when people step away from this, what I want people to take away from this is, right, I need to do, like what we always do in our household is, this is what I learned from Sikh Women's Aid, we do a weekly family check-in, all devices, all phones, everything's turned off and put away, and we just get around the kitchen table and we just check in with each other. It's more us doing it with the kids.
No,
My
that's
husband
good.
and I, we will have the grown-up check-in, what's been going on at work, what's been stressful. My husband has a stressful job, I have a stressful role in
Yeah.
SWA, and just checking in with each other, that we're not taking our frustrations out on each other,
No,
protecting
solid.
the family at all costs, because it became so important to me. Because when you start looking at root causes, because when our community has any meaningful discussion, it's like men are doing this, girls are doing this. If girls fight back, they're aggressive feminists, because they're saying to men, actually, I don't want to marry a little, roadman trash like you. Men
Yeah.
aren't used to the rejection from
No.
Apnia.
No.
Apnia are starting to reject men in a way that they have never been rejected before, because women are starting to realize, you know what, I can do better than this. I can do better, because if the minimum that a woman wants is love, care, respect, and protect, provide, mate. If you want to go back to basics, and this is
Caveman
like
stuff.
caveman stuff. This is
Yeah.
like your when you look at your wiring, you have
Yeah.
the what's it
Hardwired.
called, the ancient part of your brain that's been there since time began. Man and woman, we do gravitate towards each other. That's not going to change. But now it's like we're destroying each other, and that to me is scary, because then what's our children's future going to look like if we don't start nipping this in? We can't escape responsibility for the mess created by our ancestors. At some point in the ancestral line, we're going to have to stop and be like, right, how much more are we going to allow things to fuck up before we go to a point of no return? In some things, we have gone to a point of no return, and I'm not sure what that's going to look like. And when I say that, I talk about the Gurdwara spaces more. I think we are at a point of
Yeah.
no return. And I'm not going to call it a Bantik space. I'm going to call it the Masand space. So these are people holding on to Gurdwara's positions, simply because of the control element. And like when you think of the multi-million pounds that pass through our Gurdwaras, where are the community services that then say to the community, you've trusted us with your donations, this is what we are giving you back. I am sick of I'm sick of contributing to building funds. We don't need buildings, we need services. We actually need Parchariks who are able to understand the reality of the Sikh Punjabi community. Why? Because one thing that really, really frustrates me is, like, I see this in the Masand space, is that if you were raped as a woman in 1984, the pain and the suffering that this Masand Pant feels for those
Yeah.
women, which is right. Any woman whose Izzat Pat was looted in such a vile way, she deserves respect, she deserves love, and she deserves a community around it to say, "But teri koi galti nahi, jine tera balatkar kita, odi galti a. Teri community, tere bande tere naal khade a." We were in court for a 5-week trial of a priest, a Hindu priest, who was alleged to have sexually abused 5 of his followers. 2 of them were only 5 and 7 when he started. We were doing menta. This man brought his cult into the court and he was threatening those girls. Band kithe si? We put calls out, like we had to hire a security firm and pay them. And you know, the guys we hired, Bajade, they felt so ashamed taking money off us because they were like, Bibian shouldn't have to be paying us for this. So this poor guy, he rang round and he goes, "Guys, sanu bande chahiye a, outside court, this is happening." And they saw it with their own eyes, what was happening. No fucker came outside that court to defend those women. But we have more respect. Like I said earlier, if you're raped under certain conditions, you have the pyar sympathy, conditional acceptance of rape victims. But when she's being done by her chacha or her dad or her cousin, then it's like, no, we don't want to talk about that. What the hell was she? It's to me, it's just disturbing. Like when a woman's raped, she's raped. You know, you've taken something from her that is so precious to her. But worst of all, it's you've ruined her life because we've taught her all of her honor and her izzat is to do with what's between her legs. But then the man has held no honor over what's between his legs. He's never conducted himself with honor in the same way a woman's expected. But when a woman's raped or she's sexually assaulted or she says a Granthi abused me or a Kirtani abused me, he's allowed to say, "Oh, we had sex, but it was consensual." So this is a defense that the Granthis like to use right now. We had sex, but it was consensual. Salia, tu te Granthiyan, tu ki karda si? What were you doing? What were you doing in a Gurdwara banging women? But they never, but those Granthis, they just moved on to other Gurdwara, touch up women there, move to another. I can't keep track now. At one stage, I was tracking 21 Granthis, and they move that many times. And now, if a Granthi is moving that many times, that means there's been that many incidents. So the figures that we have around sexual abuse, last year, between 2022 and 2024, 16% of our casework was spiritual and faith-based abuse. 8% of our survey respondents said that they'd experienced sexual abuse. We have a population of 523,000 Sikh Punjabis in the UK. 8% of that is tens and thousands of girls. I just want to put that into context for you. That's what's happening in religious and spiritual places where the names of our Guru are being taken, where Guru Granth Sahib Ji is. So to me, the biggest pakhand in religion are people occupying those spaces who are prostituting our Guru out to the highest bidder on weekends, charging £2,000 for a counterparts, while families are sat downstairs in the langar hall because you have provided them no means of connecting with that Gurbani. You just say to them, pay for this part. So we're doing pujas like the Hindus. Yeah, puja hi ho gaya. You're doing a ritual. You don't understand anything. If you'd have taken one shabd from Guru Granth Sahib Ji and understood it and applied it to your life, you would have more fal from that one shabd application than an akhand part in which you've listened to 0.2% and probably understood more against the same. Honestly, we were doing such a disservice to the community. I could sit here for hours, but I'm conscious that it's like 10:30. We've been on here for nearly 2.5 hours. But we've got so much to do as a community. And one of the biggest things is just acknowledging it and recognizing it when it happens and supporting victims and spotlighting perpetrators. Like, put a big ass spotlight on the perpetrators in your family. Why are you inviting the Kanjar uncle to your Sukhmani Sai parts, to your family functions? Why are you putting your kids into situations where you know there's a dodgy family member? Why are you doing that? Please don't stop it. Oh, but फिर उन्होंने कहना है अभी आए नहीं, and Your child is safe. You are safe. Screw what people say. लोकां ने की कहना पता नहीं सी किन्नी कुड़ियां मरवा दित्तियां आ किन्ने मुंडे भी मरे आ. Because when you think of male suicide, like, there was a big we had a young boy who committed suicide, and whenever I hear of young boys and young men committing suicide, I'm always like, why? What led up to this moment where a boy didn't want to live anymore? What led up to the moment that that girl didn't want to live anymore? What are we doing in our homes and our communities that are creating environments for suicides, not healing?
No, excellent. So
Any
also with the marriages,
questions?
yeah, I have, but it's I got to carry on?
I'm good, yeah.
Okay. So we're talking about the Godore cases. There was one where a woman got raped 18 times and we had a dispute because obviously I said she wasn't trapped in a room. She kept going back to the Gyannis.
Yes.
So I don't class that as rape. So
Yeah.
how would
Right.
you class that as rape?
I can't talk about that case right now because of
Okay.
confidentiality reasons. I know exactly what you're talking about, but right now, Mal, I can't discuss it.
Okay.
But I can discuss the concept with you because
Yeah,
I
do
had
that one.
massive online beef with you about this.
Yeah.
Because it was like, how can a woman be raped 18 times?
But when she's
Very,
going back to them.
No, this is what, when you say going back to them again, I can't discuss the case.
Okay.
Now, what you call going back, what I would say is that when you're in a setting where you are homeless and where you are living is also where your perpetrators are living, where have you got to escape? And if you've left one rapist and you're now living with another 2 rapists, where are you safe? And when you talk about being raped 18 times, now, if we talk about grooming, Mal, what is grooming? Grooming is the building of trust. Now, you and I have worked on cases. I know there's one case that you and I have worked on together where we've spoken to male victims. And male victims, now males are the most likely cohort of gender that will go into the fight when it comes to fight or flight. But when you have been groomed, grooming is another word for trust building. And in a spiritual space, you are using God to build trust. So you imagine trust comes in degrees. Generally, we are not trusting people. I know you and me, Mal, we're not trusting at all.
No.
We will not trust before we will trust.
Yeah,
But not
100%.
everyone is like us.
No,
There's
that's
people
true.
who will walk into a Gurdwara and think this is the one space, and this is one thing that sexual abuse survivors tell me, is that when they've gone into a Gurdwara, they've gone in thinking, you know what, this is the safest place I can be because it's God's house. So when someone is talking to you, so now I'm talking religious grooming now, this isn't sexual grooming. Religious grooming is using God and you doing conversations with someone, invoking God to build trust. So when I talk to you, Mal, and we have our God conversations, you will have an opinion of me after that conversation. If you've taken something away from that conversation, you're like, shit, man, I didn't believe that. That's like blown my mind. I never thought about that. And then you'll automatically, without realizing, have some form of respect for me because through my mouth, you took away something that you learned from. So most grooming starts off like this. It's a trust building exercise so that the other person lowers their defenses and will disclose things to you. Then what a groomer does, he's able to use this information. So in the way a therapist will sit with a client and she will ask questions and it helps build a picture of that client in the therapist's head. So the therapist can think about what tools do I have in my toolbox to best help this person. Now, when you apply that to a groomer, the groomer is thinking, how best can I use this information to ensure that I can do what I want to do to her and also maintain that I don't get caught? And this person, like, I am the worst candidate for a groomer. A groomer will talk to me and within 5 minutes go, nah. I can tell you, I've been into a Gurdwara. No one's tried shit with me. No one ever has. I've had nothing but good experiences in Gurdwaras. And my bad experiences has been when I've seen people mismanage Gurdwaras or mismanage their duties. But in terms of me being at risk, the only time I've been at risk is when I've attended protests, or I rocked up a Willenhall Gurdwara after the Ronan Kunda case, asking why committee members were giving references to convicted murderers. That's another thing Gurdwaras like to do, not all, but some, is that they give character references to rapists, murderers, domestic abusers, to use in
Crazy.
court to lower sentences. So grooming is the lowering of trust. So the information is disclosed. And once a woman discloses, "Mere ghar wale ne idda kita ya," when mere nu mein shorty hundi si, because that's what they want. They need information about that woman that she's deeply shameful about. Once that information is revealed, you have the hook, what I'm going to call the hook. Is right, I can hook her now. So once they've got the information that they know will keep her coming back, because if they threaten to disclose that information, she will be shamed even. Because remember, sharam isn't the same for men as it is for women. Women have endured sodomy, they have endured flipping gang rapes, they have endured so much under the bullshit of sharam, under this bullshit be sharam tete, no one's going to marry you, you're never going to be a mom. You take away everything that makes a woman in your threats to her if she is dishonored or shamed. So I need you to understand that. And once all the groundwork has been laid, and this can happen in weeks, or this can take months. But
No, that makes sense.
And that groomer knows, she's vulnerable. I just need key sets of information from her that I can hook her with. Once they have that information, then all bets are off, and it literally is, you know, the perpetrator performing some sort of sexual act to see what he can get away with. Will she fight? Will she fly? Will she push me back? Or will she just stand there and take it? Most of the rape victims I've worked to, fawn, freeze, and flop are the trigger responses, that they will freeze, especially where grooming has been involved, because it is the last thing they expected. So it happens once, and then they don't talk about it, and then it's like, if I don't talk about it, it'll never happen again. Then when it starts happening again, then she's like, what the hell are you doing? What are you doing? Don't worry, no one's gonna know. I don't like it when you do this. चलो दस दे किसी ਨੂੰ ਮੇਰਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੁਛ ਬਿਗਾੜਨਾ ਤੇਰਾ ਸਾਰਾ ਕੁਛ ਨਾਲ ਖੋਜਣਾ ਜੇ ਤੂੰ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੂੰ. Men play into our community's own notions of shame and honor. They know, like today, Mal, you know the case we're talking about. Them two can still work in a Gurdwara. There's nothing stopping them. Absolutely nothing stopping them except our people taking a stance. And we know that in that setting, no one ain't going to take a stance, because I would probably say there's so many of these kinds of perpetrators in our Gurdwara. And the thing is, like, you can see, yeah, I have send me legal letters, threaten me. I have the data, I have the case notes to back up what I'm saying. I don't have to sit here and lie about anything, Mal. A lot of the things I know, you know, because we come across the same intelligence in different ways. That's how open of a disgusting secret this is. Unfortunately for us, if we don't have a victim approach us, if we don't have the name of a perpetrator, all I can do is log that incident, put a call out, begging a victim to come forward and report, begging someone to give me a name of a perpetrator, so we can at least track this person or try and raise some level of safeguarding. Or right now, we've written to 3 Gurdwara in the West Midlands, because of the amount of safeguarding referrals we are having, the amount of sexual harassment of women within Gurdwaras. The Gurdwaras haven't responded to us, and soon we'll be putting them in the public domain as well. That's not what we want to do. When we name and shame Gurdwara, that is the end of a process of us trying to write to them, communicate with them, offering to work with them. We get this from most of them, that from most of them. So then when we then start going online and saying, right, X Gurdwara has had X many complaints, and we need you to do something about it because you're ignoring our letters and now we're going to shame you. Then it's like, oh, Sikh Women's Aid is disrespecting all UK Gurdwaras. They
Yeah.
owe an apology to the Panth. And it's like, if we
RSS,
want to
your
talk
RSS.
about apologies to the Panth, let's talk about an apology to every single victim who walked into a Gurdwara seeking God and found a rapist. Let's start with apologies to those women first. And those might have been women who were before I was even born. So if we want to start talking about apologies, let's start apologizing to the right people first. And those were the women, the children, the boys, the men that were abused in the name of Sikhi, because that is what is happening. And that should never have happened. It has never been allowed. Guys, anyone who's ever stuck at it now with us for the last 2 hours, if you go to the Sikh Women's Aid website, we have written 3 reports. I wrote the faith and exploitation with my CEO. We've cited Gurbani, we've cited Rehetname, we've cited Itahasik Sakya. Big shout out to Turiya because all the books we used for that research we got from Turiya charity. You have
No.
all the tools to become strong Gursikh households on your own. Please start investing in resources, start learning yourself. Our community is one of the most educated out there. We are smart, clever people. We do not need a middleman to connect us to Sikhi. We have all the tools available at our disposal to do this ourselves. I mean, I was resorted to that because I have a very, very uncomfortable relationship with Gurdwara in the UK right now by virtue of the work I do. I
Yes.
don't want to be like that. But when you hear and you've spoken to the number of victims that I have, I
Oh,
struggle
yeah.
to set foot in a Gurdwara today. I really do.
No, fair play. And that's understandable. So just to summarize up stuff, yeah. So we both agree the nuclear family is important.
Mm-hmm.
If at most marriage issues can be fixed, and if they can be fixed, get the therapy, get the counseling, fix it. Because the grass always seems green on the other side. You know, sometimes it's better to stick with the devil you know and you know, repair them and then make them an angel
Yeah.
instead of finding a new devil, yeah? Because it's easier to get sex, yeah? All the woman has to do is put a picture up, put a filter on, put a bit of makeup on. She's gonna get 10 bande. Same with a guy. Show a bit of money, show a wad of cash, show some jewelry, nice suit. He's gonna get women. And most people just want sex. So once you've got the
I'm gonna challenge
mm,
that a little bit.
mm,
Women don't want sex as much as men do. Women actually want commitment. They want
companionship, yeah.
someone they want companionship. They want someone who's going to be loyal. But trauma manifests in a different way.
Mm,
And even though sex for women is so much different than what it is for men, Mal, sex is
mm,
much more emotional. Women are the worst at having an affairs because it can never just be a one night thing for them. So, like, when we're talking about nuclear family and repairing,
mm,
in therapy, the repair, like, now, hypothetically, me and my husband go into therapy.
mm,
We can sit and have a therapy session. I need to work on me. He needs to work on him.
mm,
I can't fix him any more than he can fix me. Now, Ma, I love my husband with my entire heart and soul.
mm,
There is no man on this planet in my eyes that compares to my husband. He cannot fix me, Mal. When I had my trauma, because I do this work because I have a history of trauma in all of this too. I had to sit with a therapist by myself for 1 whole year and work through my issues. And my husband was there making me chadak up afterwards, telling me how well I did. But what was inside me that made me that way, the things that I'd done to myself because of what was done to me, I had to do that. My husband can help me in that journey, but I have to take accountability for my fuck ups and I have to fix them.
yeah,
What we
100%.
need from men, if there's one thing men could do, is sit in yourselves and make a list of your shittiest adata, and one by one start working through that list and fix those things. You will become an 80 to 70% better parent, better husband, better spouse. If your marriages have ended and there's no hope of reconciliation, let that go. Let it
Yeah.
go, because if it's not meant for you, it's not meant for
Just
you. Let that
become a
person
better
go,
person.
because then you're gonna come into the next June and play this shit out with them again. Let those
Yeah.
people go, because if it hasn't worked out in this life, know that God's got something better planned for you.
Yeah, so I'll rephrase that.
Yeah.
It's easy to get sex, what I'm saying.
Yes.
That's what I meant, kind of.
Yeah.
It's easy to get sex out there. People give you attention for sex, whether girls want it or not or whatever, I know. So it's easy to get sex, but it's not easy to find a good
Yeah.
person. So if you've got a person that's half decent and got a bit of flaws and it can be manageable, fixed, I mean, I recommend therapy. You probably yourself recommend
As
therapy, yeah?
long as there's no violence, there's no abuse, and I'm going to call them dysfunctionally functioning marriages. Therapy can absolutely help, but there has to be a willingness from both partners to
Yeah.
engage in that. It can't be one dragging the other into therapy or one going, you know what, this is a
Both.
load of shit. It's got to be both of you, and you've got to be committed because you're going to therapy to fix the marriage. You're not going to therapy to blame your wife or your husband for why you
No.
are the way you are.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And yeah, so religious spaces, be careful. Just because someone looks religious doesn't mean they're perfect or
100%.
angel pure. This
100%. You
grooming,
know what?
rape.
Sikhi says this.
Mm,
Look at someone's actions. Do not judge, and do not judge me. Look, I'm sitting, Mal and I are sitting in front of you with the stara and beards on. You might have enjoyed this conversation, but the reality is you know neither of us.
no,
You should never trust us on face value. You should never trust anyone on face
no.
value. It should be our actions and our conduct. And you think, you know what? Fair play. Geezer, you know, Geezer's done something good. Fair play. Bibi's done something good. It should be based on
Keep your
actions, not on
guard up.
appearance.
Always keep your guard up. That's the safest way nowadays because the Masan stuff got so bad that Guru Gobind Singh had to burn them. So that was the reckoning.
That was the
And
reckoning.
another reckoning is probably coming, you know. So
But
with
I'm
the
not going
honor
to
stuff,
condone the burning or killing of anyone, but there's
no, no,
definitely a reckoning
yeah,
coming. There's a
yeah,
reckoning coming on
yeah,
abusers in that space, definitely.
yeah. So with the honor stuff, like, you know, women need to speak up, forget the fake honor stuff because there's real honor. Everyone should have, man and women should have real honor.
Yeah.
But there's also honor, which is like, you know, you can't talk about your abuser because your honor is going to get ruined. That's fake
Yeah,
honor.
of course.
That's not dishonor at all.
No.
That, in fact, when you speak up, you know, you deter someone else from that person. You make awareness. Like when I've
Absolutely.
spoken up about certain famous preachers, they might still be at it, but there's less victims because some people stopped going to them. Or even if they go to them, there's a bit of commotion, a bit of rumors. So if you can't get justice from the police, you can't get vigilante justice, the minimum you could do is tell your story.
Yeah.
Show your face, tell your story. Even if you want to blur your face, tell your story. So it can prevent some from happening to somebody else. Yeah,
I mean,
so
that's
I'm
how
a,
this all started when you think about the core movement. Anyone
yeah,
listening tonight who haven't heard of the core movement, go onto that platform. I mean, Preet started a revolution. And when I think about Sikh Women's Aid, it's molded off platforms like that, where women started coming out. That's what I'm saying. The reckoning's coming because women are not staying quiet. And social media, like India now, the Godman culture is collapsing in India. Every second Baba is being done for paedophilia, rape, murder, killing of women, killing of children, building cremation grounds within their Sunstar so they can kill and bury and cremate on there. It's all imploding. And the fact that we have such a strong, you know, Sant Baba culture here is just very, very disturbing. Because to me, Sants Brahm Gyamini and Mahapurush, their Bani is in Guru Granth Sahib Ji. So the caliber of a Mahapurush is Guru Gobind Singh Ji. The caliber of a Mahapurush or a Sant or a Brahmgyani is someone, we are not in a position to say, yeah, that's a Brahmgyani, because we've got no Gyan of Brahma ourselves. So how can you go and say, oh, such a kind of a see, Exoat? You ain't seen Baba, do you know Exoat Male? I'm just saying, be streetwise with these
yeah,
people.
streetwise, being streetwise, yeah.
Not be like, don't please, this has to stop. The only person you matha take to is your guru, and your guru is gyan. Your guru is in a book. It's not a kitab. It's not a granth. The granth contains gyan, and that gyan is being hidden by the Masand Panth right now. And the gyan, and if the gyan came out of Guru Granth Sahib, we would have, within 5 years, we would see a transformed community. If
It's
we could
happening.
just get the secure, it is massively. I think there's a reckoning coming now. The old guard has got to drop. And we're here for it.
So just going to go through some of the questions. Is therapy from a specialist better or from Barney a blueprint for us to understand? Look, sometimes when you're so depressed and you feel heavy, you can't even read Barney. So obviously Barney's therapy, Barney's hypnotherapy, Barney's everything here. But I think the combination of both. Or have you
And
got
I
anything to
also
add?
think, when you say Barney,
Mm.
reciting Barney without understanding what you're
Yeah,
reading
yeah.
is a ritual.
Mm.
So if you're going to do Barney,
Mm.
just take shabds, take small shabds,
I
and
understand
get
it.
English to Punjabi dictionary or Mankosh, translate it, build a connection with the shabd, because the purpose of the shabd is, if you want to use shabd as therapy, you have to understand what you're reading. And right now, that's very difficult if you're born here and Punjabi was not available to you at home. That's when therapeutic support, and there's so many Sikh Punjabi therapists, but what I would absolutely emphasize at this point, a life coach is not a therapist. Go for a qualified clinical psychologist or a psychotherapist with a level 5 or above, and look for accreditation to the BACP if they're psychotherapists and the HCPC if they're clinical psychologists. There's so much pop psychology, and
Yeah,
it's so dangerous. Like some of the stuff I hear,
yeah,
like
it's crazy.
you're triggering people, you're getting
I'm not
people to
bringing.
relive their traumas, then you're sending them home triggered because you don't understand the therapy. I mean, I've done level 3 counseling. I didn't
Yeah,
go
wicked.
to level 5 because I wasn't going to be a therapist. I did level 3 because when I do the helpline at Sikh Women's Aid, I
Yeah, you need a
wanted to
bit of
make sure that
knowledge.
I had that knowledge to support clients. But I'm not a therapist. I would never class myself as a therapist, or I've done level 3 counseling. There's people who are doing life coaching courses. Now, everyone has a preference. I just don't like the fact that how unregulated that space is that I don't know what one life coach has done and and to be honest, most people's own lives aren't in order. So the
Go
whole
on, that
idea of a
then.
life coach, someone coming into your life and coaching you on how to live, I'm not saying that it's all bad, but it's a pseudoscience. Whereas
Yeah,
psychotherapy, psychology is evidence science that is proven to have positive outcomes. If you don't want to go to a Sikh therapist, don't go to someone outside the community. But if you want someone who recognizes what you've been through, South Asian therapists are amazing. There's so many options out there for you. So please
no,
access that
amazing.
support.
So I am Satinder G. I think if you message Benji privately about the concerns that he or she's got, that's
So I can't see something that all my messages have stopped coming in.
okay. It's about something I'll get them to message you privately. It's something to do with your CEO and he's been re-traumatized by the CEO. Something to that.
Oh, Satinderjit.
Yeah,
I think I know who this is. Satinderjit, my love. Just send me an email. We've
yeah.
already had a confirmation with you. So
Mm.
Satinderjit, if you're live on today,
He's live,
you've
yeah.
had an email from us. You know exactly who you need to complain to if you're not happy with our service.
Yeah,
Please do that. And we're here to help. We know that everything's been sorted. But Satinderjit,
yeah,
you haven't been in touch with us for 3 months, so it's interesting that you're on a live today.
yeah.
But you've had 3 months to be in touch with us, and you haven't since my last email to you. I wrote to you directly, and I addressed all of your concerns. I'm happy, and it's all been addressed from our side.
He said
So you
he
do
said
need
I
to be a little bit careful, Satinderji, in what you're doing, because we have all the exchanges just as much as you do. And I understand you've been through a difficult situation, but trying to resolve an issue on an Instagram live rather than our email addresses and contact numbers, which you have, and you've not used them, that's I wouldn't say that's a productive way of
yeah.
addressing any concerns,
He said
Satinderji. So
yeah,
you can drop me an email. I haven't had an email from you in nearly 3 months, so I'm unsure of what you're doing here and having this conversation, but happy to speak to you via an email because
yeah,
that's how you've been engaging with me previously. So I'm not sure what you hope to achieve from this live, but please do drop me an email, Satinderji. Thank you. I can't see it.
no,
The last message I saw was from Bummy, and it says some men never grow up.
no, yeah.
Mummy's
That's
old,
a long
can't do
time
no
ago.
wrong. I'm not
Yeah,
seeing any more
that's
from that. So
ages ago. Okay,
yeah,
there's loads more. So yeah, Stingy just keep going. He said, I've been silenced and stuff, just stuff like that. You need to take it out privately with you, Anna. And he said, oh,
Yeah, it's no, let her carry on. It's fine.
yeah,
We're used
okay,
to this with Satindajit. So you carry on, Satindajit. The comments are yours, my lovely. You know
no,
what you need to do. We've replied to you, so that's
that's it.
fine.
Okay, any more questions? Let me just go through. Yeah, because yeah, you're miles back in it with all the
Yeah,
stuff.
I haven't
Okay,
seen any of the questions because
yeah,
I think you're getting them now. I'm not getting
yeah.
any of the.
Chalo, yeah, I wanted to call it a day. It's been amazing, it's been informative. You've backed it all up with data. The
I'm so
data's on.
sorry if I've missed questions. I didn't realize questions were coming through. Have they all been answered?
Most of them, yeah,
Okay.
because I said questions at the end. Most of them are answered. Yeah, most of them have. Has anyone got any other questions? Let us know because we're gonna lock off otherwise.
Yeah, we've got 5 minutes. So if you lock off at 11, there's 5 minutes
Yeah,
if anyone has any more
yeah.
questions. I can't see them. So Mal, if you just
No,
read them out.
I'm just gonna go through them. It's mainly Satinder just
That's fine.
hogging it like finger.
No, it's fine. Now
Chalo,
you carry on, Satindajit. It's fine because
chalo.
I know what this is all about. Is I've got all the emails, and again, I
No,
haven't heard
wicked.
from you in months. So please
Oh,
drop me an email.
uh,
You're not going to get what
cool.
you want from an Instagram live in the comments, my
Nah,
lovely.
chalo.
Honestly.
I'll call it a day
Yeah,
then, man. Okay,
yeah,
thanks for
no,
the
that's
thanks for
absolutely.
the
Mal,
okay,
thank you
wicked.
so much for the
No.
space. Thank you so much
Well,
for the discussion.
people saying thank you for the work you do
Oh,
on your
thank you so much. I
yeah.
can't see any of the comments.
Yeah,
All
that's
mistakes are ours. All
Sue
praise be
Ho
for the
26.
feet of Guru Gobind Singh Ji Mata Sahib Deva. And
Yeah.
if you are a victim of abuse and you're on this call, please reach out. You are not at fault. You are not the one who needs to hold the shame. If you're a victim of any form of abuse, please reach out. If you're a male and you've also suffered abuse, you can reach out and we can signpost you to male specific services. We know some excellent male therapists as well that
Yeah.
we often refer men to. So,
Oh,
Mal,
if you
any final thoughts?
nah, if you've missed the live, I'm gonna leave it up on my Insta. This will be permanent up, and I'll put it on my YouTube everywhere and stuff. So it's gonna be there for reference. It is 2.5 hours long or whatever it is. Just watch it hour a day or half an hour every day when you get time. But it's a wealth of knowledge. It's there. If someone listens to this, they will get clued up on a lot of stuff.
Mm.
Basically, that 2 hours, it can really redefine their whole life. It could save them from a sexual abuse from a religious place. It could sort their marriage issues out. It should be able to redefine the thinking of younger generation coming. You know what I mean? I'm not perfect. I've made many mistakes. I've made some of the mistakes you've talked about. And, we can only repent and move on in life. And this is why sometimes to redeem yourself, you do work like this so others don't make that mistake, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And like I said, the only person we should only ever be in competition with is who we were yesterday. Are
yeah,
you better than who you were yesterday? Because what do they say? Every saint has a past and every sinner has a future. So nothing is set in stone. Things can change today. You've just got to take ownership. And if there are perpetrators on this live, honestly, check yourselves, get yourself sorted. There are perpetrator programs out there that are there to help you, but if you're going to think that you can continue perpetrating and have a happy family, that does not work. Your household is in abject suffering right now, and the only person oblivious to it is you. So please do something about it. And if you're a woman being abused, please reach out. I mean, I do have hope for our community. We are an amazing community. When we put all the domestic abuse aside, we do so much good in the world, but we can't keep hiding the bad behind the good. So I have real hope for the future and the next generation, like my children. I think of my sister who's 11 years younger than me. I think of my children. And the reason we do this work is so I'm not sticking more dead women onto posters next year. Do you
no,
know what I
but
mean?
things are changing because look, we're talking about therapy, trauma. These are discussions that our elders never had. I never heard of this when I was 18, 16. So a lot is, with the social media, with the modern education, like I said, the South Asian
Yeah.
therapists, there's loads of Sikh therapists. It's a new thing, and it's gonna. I know Galjog's getting stronger, but with Galjog, there's advances as well in the right direction as well. There's
There's
help out
no
there if you
bigger
need it.
power than ik. When you tap into the energy of ik Kalyug ਵੀ ਇੱਕ ਦੇ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਕੀ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਆ.
Yeah,
It's like at the end we've got massive amounts of accountability, we've got massive amount of trust, and we've got massive amount of healing to do. and we've got generations of that to do. So the
Generational
hard work
trauma.
starts now. The hard work starts now, and the responsibility is on all of us. And you're right, Mal, we won't always get it right. I mean, we're the first Sikh Women's Aid. You know,
Mm.
we're seeing things that, you know, we never thought were possible and we didn't think were happening in our community. And, you know, we're being humbled on a day-to-day basis when we see the kinds of things that we see. So, you know, it's a learning curve. And like, you know, we're so quick to shut people down and disregard their experiences, when in reality, everyone is just on a scale of suffering. And it's so easy to come out of that if we reach out for support and we start being a community. Women start standing with women, men start standing with men, start healing, holding men to higher standards, women holding each other to the highest of standards. And it's okay if we don't meet those standards, but every day you work to be a better version of yourself. And the Sikhi, the framework of Sikhi is there to align to all of that. But right now, we've just got behaviors and habits that massively need transforming. And that's the first place to start.
Yeah, and it will, like you said, anyone that's born has messed up in previous lives. That's why we're
Course,
reborn. Yeah,
course.
so not all of us, no one's a perfect angel, otherwise we wouldn't be here, right? So
Absolutely,
forgive
absolutely.
yourself, carry on, recorrect, redeem yourself, and turn your negative situation to a positive situation. Like I said, you have to walk away from a marriage because just too much has been done. You know, before you go to a next marriage, heal yourself. If you're gonna go the single life, bhakti route, seva route, whatever you're gonna do.
Mm.
The Satyajit said, "Okay, Benji, I've phoned you. They do you are doing good work. Great talk, by the way." So she's on board now, or he, whoever it was, they were on board.
No,
So they're telling him,
it's fine. You know what? This is trauma.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
see it, like, you know, there's no hatred, there's
yeah,
no, you know, so
yeah,
the amount of gala sometimes we get from clients, and then we stay, because
mm,
we understand that women are in fight and flight, that sometimes when you're helping someone, they don't see that you're helping, they're trying to see their perpetrator in you. And
yeah,
sometimes you can do things that remind them of their
100%.
perpetrator. You're not
That's what
their
she said.
perpetrator, you're not trying to perpetrate, but like, we're used to it, and that's
It's
why
complex.
we are who we are. We hold space, and it can be so hard sometimes, but this is how we heal. We hold space for all that messy stuff. Like, you know, the conversations we're having today, this has to be normalized. This has to be happening on the mainstream podcast. It shouldn't be happening in fringe lives at 8 o'clock at night, because we want to talk about all the fluffy stuff, but we don't want to
Yeah,
get real on what our problems are. And like, you know,
yeah. This,
the more we start getting real, the quicker we get to solutions. I'm interested in solutions. I don't want to keep talking about the problems.
nah.
And the
Well,
solutions are going to come from us as a collective in the
talking.
community. Sikh Women's Aid can't fix nothing on their own. We can
No.
only fix when we have the community with us.
Yes, the first part is talking, whether it starts from fringe, podcast, or wherever. Holy, from this fringe, other people might pick up. People start, collective movements happen.
Mm.
Like I said, yeah, you're playing your part in the solutions. We can only do
Mm.
what we can do, right? That's all we
Absolutely,
can do. What
absolutely,
there's kids in Palestine being bombed, this, that. We can't go there and help them and heal them, you know what I mean? We can only deal with what's in our grasp because we are limited. We're not the almighty powerful, you know what I mean?
absolutely.
We can only do what's in West Midlands. You can only do what the cases come to. You can't solve every case in the world, you know what I mean?
Oh God.
So
I mean,
yeah.
honestly, some of the things that we've seen, the
Mm,
absolute miscarriages, and you have to carry on. You have to carry on, and you have to get women through it the other end, because what else is there afterwards? Otherwise, we will have more women committing suicide. We'll have more women being killed, and we're having. What happens when women are killed is you've got children who are left without parents. I mean, that's the end result of this. Mom kills dad, dad kills mom. Actually, more often dad kills mom, unfortunately.
yeah,
And
that's
then the
100%,
last
yeah.
memory that child has of their parents is daddy killing mummy. And we've sat with those children, and I honestly would never wish that on my worst enemy. Like, when you look at the children of homicides, and you just see how their lives are absolutely, it's like you've thrown a bomb in their lives and everything is shattered. And then the families don't help. I mean, I can't talk about some of the cases that we've seen, but when
Mm,
you've seen a child whose dad has murdered the mom. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. I mean,
there's no hope, you know.
It's horrible. Women committing suicide pregnant because boyfriends have abandoned them, and like, you know, it's what we are doing is not good, and we have to change. We have to do better. There's an onus on all of us. It's okay to mess up. Pick yourselves back up, sort yourselves out as a people. Honestly, we cannot carry on the way we are. We will not allow it to carry on the way it is. I mean, we in 3 years, we've killed ourselves to get Sikh Women's Aid in government level, at
Yeah.
national, local, regional. We are everywhere right now with our data and statistics to make sure services, police, social workers, judges, clinicians in hospitals, ministers of government, there is no door that we are not knocking on to say this is what's happening to our women. If you come into contact with them, these are the things you should be looking for. Now we need our community to go in and start disrupting in a way it's never disrupted before. And yes, it's going to be painful. Yes, you're going to lose people. Being sovereign, yeah, you know, Guru Gobind Singh Ji said, "Sawa lakh se ek ladaun, tabe Gobind Singh naam kahaun." It's a beautiful sentiment that a lot of our Khalsa love to preach, but to live it, to live that, when you take on the might of your entire perpetrating community and say, you are the problem. The day you raised your hands and battered your damn wife because you couldn't open your mouth and communicate the thing that you needed to say, you destroyed your family in that moment. Own it. Can you own it? If you can own it, you can be redeemed. If you can't own it and say, oh, no, she was being this, then you know what? Leave her, let her get on with their life, and you go live it, rot in a cave somewhere, because you're a danger to society. And when I'm saying that to my brothers, I have no, मैंने कोई सौख नहीं मिलता कह के, that I'm telling a Khalsa Singh Sikh Punjabi brother, you're a danger to society, you need to be locked up in a hole somewhere, because one day you're going to kill someone the way you are. That's the worst thing that as a Sikh woman I can say to a Sikh man. Like, you know, I don't, you know, when we talk about feminism and women get some sort of perverse pleasure out of this, no. When our men fail, society fails.
No, wicked. So yeah, I'm gonna end it there. Just in the marriage, everyone talk respectfully. Just don't cross the boundaries. Set the boundaries at an early time, and you know, if like I said, dysfunction, resentment builds up. Jello, wicked, excellent. Because we could go for hours. There's so much more to. I didn't ask all the questions, but it's just I feel sleepy now, and I haven't been on my top form because I've just recovered from COVID. So my voice is gone. I've been coughing, and I've had some blank moments. So because I'm still
Chalo,
drained, but
I'll back
I
you for
didn't
the
want to miss
rest
the
of the
talk.
evening now.
No, I didn't want to miss the talk, man. I'm just gonna go play a bit of console and escape and go sleep. Jello, why could you go castle?
वाहिगुरु जी का
Why did you
खालसा
keep
वाहिगुरु जी
it?
की फतेह
Thanks,
जी
thanks for your
भुला
time.
चुका दी
Respect.
माफी
100%. Bye.